This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto became Kyuubi Soul Eater. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now, wasting no more time, let's start the story.
The serene city in the Nevada desert was illuminated by the smiling moon on the darkest of nights. This city, known to tourists as the oasis of the desert, is called Death City. Despite its gloomy exterior, it is actually a vibrant city with a rich cultural heritage. But in the end, tonight wasn't so quiet. Similar to the wealthier areas of the city, a well-windowed mansion with the Shinigami's emblems, skull and sides, was the scene of a robbery. A shadowy figure rushed to the middle window, seemingly jumping, and the lights in the room came on. A crash. Everyone inside was made aware of the intruder when the person burst through the glass windows. When the figure lands on the street, despite the two-story drop, it is revealed to be a man dressed in black spandex underpants held up by a white belt, white boots, fingerless gloves, and a full-body red tight skin-pressed outfit that covered his entire body except for his head. The entire outfit was covered by a yellow-like cape. He wore a freaky kind of mask, one that depicted a demon-like expression, a sharp nose, spiky growths over his ears, and a smooth head. Only a small portion of his brown hair was visible from underneath his mask, which covered the majority of his face. His sharp, pointed teeth and yellow, pupilless eyes were his final characteristics. The man laid the bag he carried over his shoulders and opened it to reveal blue orbs of light that glowed. Human souls were represented by these orbs. He grinned sharply, closed the bag, put it back on his shoulders, and began to flee before trouble could get to him. Bang! Bang! He stops dead in his tracks as two pinkish energy shots almost miss him. He spins around to see who stopped him. He looks up to see the criminal standing far above him, aiming his still smoking guns at him. The guns had a black handle and a silver texture. Since the blood-grinning moon appeared to be looming behind the shooter at him, the robber's only clue about the person was that he had the silhouette of a small male figure almost in jest with his two pistols at his side. The shooter stood cockily at the edge of a rooftop. In just a single second, the thief recognized the victim and, unwilling to remain any longer, turned and fled. The shooter only grinned slightly at the escape attempt. He fired a few shots as he followed the robber's path, and it appeared to the robber that luck had spared him. However, he was leading the shooter without realizing it. The robber in the red outfit made a quick turn and ran straight into a dead-end alleyway. Narrowly missing being shot in the foot, he grunted angrily at his own foolishness for falling for such a cheap trap. "It's over, Lupin." The now identified robber, Lupin, turned to face his assailant. After hearing a child's voice, he saw the individual raise his guns a little and then begin to glow a gentle pink. In a matter of seconds, he kept watching as his pursuer raised his weapons. Bracing himself for any potential moves, the gunman flung his weapons behind him with a flick, and Lupin saw the two weapons transform into the bodies of two women and fall behind the child. The shooter put on a serious face and glared at Lupin. "Lupin the bandit. We'll be collecting your soul, turned into an egg of the demon god," the child and his partners announced together in a humorous pose, ruining the somber atmosphere. The youngest female stood behind the kneeling child with her arms extended on both sides and her legs spread, while the oldest female stood straight at the back with her arms raised. The child was kneeling to the ground with his arms spread downward. The youngest woman is slightly out of the center of the pose. Throughout, the thief could only stand there and gaze at them. "Oi, Patty. Your stance is a little off," Kid muttered and twitched as he got to his feet, pointing and stomping the ground repeatedly as he faced Patty. The innocent Patty looked down and saw what Kid meant because she was a few centimeters to the right of center. Liz jumped to her right in shock and gave Kid a sheepish gesture, saying, "Oh, I'm so weak." Liz just stood there, perspiring over the entire situation in which she found herself. The robber simply kept staring at the scene in front of him, showing no signs of improvement. Then he saw a manhole beneath him. "Hey kid. Do you think now is the time to be worrying about that?" Liz responded. "I don't care what time it is, I always want everything to be exact," he replied. She simply reasoned, "Yeah, but we're kind busy right now." Liz and Kid were still fighting when Patty heard a noise and looked up. Alone, she was the only one who saw that Lupin was trying to jump on the manhole and shove the sack full of souls down it. The bandits bouncing up and down. "Patty, haven't I always said that my aesthetic sense is all about symmetry, the greatest beauty?" The Kid. By this point, Lupin had succeeded in jamming the sack down the hole, and he soon followed, both of them vanishing into the sewers. Patty kept waving her hand in front of Kid in an attempt to get his attention, but she couldn't help but laugh at the scene and exclaim, "He got away, he got away." Kid turned to Patty and said, "When people are talking, can't you listen properly?" as he became agitated while attempting to win over Liz. "The children's corner," he said, "my aesthetic is symmetry." Liz poked her head in and said, "Here we go." Suddenly, he became agitated and said, "That's why I love using you two twin pistols when I wield you. You're symmetrical, right?" But when you turn back into human form, your hairstyles are different, and you're different heights. To illustrate his point, he either foolishly or courageously reached out with both hands, grabbing Patty's left breast with his left and Liz's right breast with his right. And you chests are different sizes, too. Quick! She yelled, I'm sorry I'm not as big as my little sister. While striking the child, she became agitated and chose to respond by pointing to his face and saying, You have 3 stripes in your hair that are only on the left side. That's not symmetrical at all, is it? K.O. Oh, the humanity. I'm a hideous pig. Why does my hair have to be this way? I'm nothing but a worthless piece of garbage. Damn it, I deserve to die. Kid said, his entire composure breaking at that point before either of his partners could stop him. He fell to the ground and pounded his fist feebly on the concrete floor. Liz moaned to herself, not again Patty. Right. The 2 sisters knelt beside their wielder and attempted to reassure him, saying, You're the next in line to the god of death, right? What do those 3 stripes matter? Kid Coon, you're not a pig. Pigs go, oink. Right? So don't be so depressed. Patty added, giving Kid a pat on the back. You mean I'm not a piece of garbage? The child asked, gazing up at his partners with gratitude, admiration, and hope in his eyes. Patty added, Trash goes, poo, to Liz's, of course not. Well, I suppose I'll report to Chichiyu, honorable father, Kid said, rising proudly once more with a sense of relief. He then turned around and got ready. I don't know whether he's easy to deal with or hard to deal with, Liz said, sitting there with a deadpan expression on her face as perspiration started to form. What a pampered brat he is. With his palms facing out, he raises his hands beneath his chin, flips them over, and rapidly touches each finger on the other hand. His thumb, index finger, and pinky finger protrude while the rest of his fingers are closed. When he extends his hands outward, light started to gather at the pointed digits in less than a second, and some black, horrifying skulls also flew off in front of Kid. A pillar of light appeared, and on the ground beneath him, the light took the form of a skull-like glyph. The skull had a round head, 3 triangle-shaped holes, 2 on top and 1 below, and a mouth with 3 pointed teeth. A happy, sing-song voice from the light exclaimed, What's up, what's up? And then the Shinigami himself appeared out of nowhere. Ah, those 3 stripes in your hair are as cute as ever, he said to Kid, leaping backwards to reveal his entire body. With a blank expression on his face, Kid answered monotonously, Chichiyu, it makes me unhappy. That is a source of pride for you. Patty and Liz both showed up behind Kid with their arms folded, and Liz whispered to Shinigami, You really shouldn't talk about that right now. This only made Shinigami more confused, as seen by his curious glance at the group. Putting that aside, he looked around and saw something. Well, whatever looks like your gathering of souls turned into eggs of the demon god is progressing nice, eh? It's more like something is missing. Is there something wrong, Chichiyu? Asks the child, observing his father's bewilderment. Kid-kun, where is Naruto-kun? He hummed to himself before turning to face his son and partners. This caused the 3 of them to tense up, and then they all turned to face the person who had vanished. Kid turned to Liz and said, Wasn't he just behind us a while ago? The Lord of Death noticed that Patty was standing by the side, staring up at the rooftops and waving, while Shinigami stood listening to Kid and Patty discuss the whereabouts of their fellow Meister. Liz was equally perplexed. Thinking back a little, but he vanished when we cornered Lupin. His eyes appeared to light up as he looked in her direction, saying, there you are. Kid and Liz paused when they heard Shinigami speak, and when they turned to look where he was looking, they saw a figure sitting on a nearby rooftop with Lupin hanging over his shoulders cold. Naruto-kun. Shinigami concluded, his trademark eye smiles. Even though it was 4 stories high, the obviously male figure simply grinned as he leapt to the ground with ease. Lupin was dropped to his right on the ground, and the Lord of Death gave him a nod of approval as Lupin's sack was dropped in the direction of Shinigami's image. Yo Chichiyu. He greeted his father with a single hand wave, his blue cerulean eyes shining. Looking at Kid, I said, What was that back there with the whole posing thing? Liz-chan, didn't we discuss this final mission with him? The final question was aimed at Liz because he and she had talked about Kid's strange introductions. Shinigami could only watch as a sweat drop appeared and his gaze turned to Lupin, who has yet to recover, but whether he did or not, he wasn't going anywhere tied up as Naruto had done. That's when he noticed, Ma. She could only sigh as she shrugged her hands up, Patty just laughing at the side as Kid's obsession was brought into the spotlight. Shinigami's blob-like hands materialized as he pointed to Lupin's form after Naruto-kun captured everyone's attention. Why haven't you eaten the Kishin egg's soul yet? Rubbing the back of his head, Naruto became anxious and said, I'm sorry, Chichiyu, but, well, he said, scuffing his foot a little, I kind of destroyed some property and sewage tunnels trying to catch him. Shinigami nodded, understanding. Naruto nodded and said, "Ah, and so you knew you'd be punished and have the soul egg taken for the damage." 3, 2, 1. Patty simply laughed hysterically as Shinigami, despite being a light image, somehow delivered his signature attack and struck Naruto atop his head, sending the poor boy crashing down onto the floor. Shinigami chop. Kid and Liz stepped back. "Ma, Naruto-kun. You need to learn self-control when using your weapon," Shinigami said, lecturing Naruto as he sat back up and rubbed his sore head. Yet controlling that kind of power is definitely hard to do. To have defeated a Kishin egg using it without causing mass destruction does show an incredible amount of self-control. Despite his best efforts of minimizing the damage, he thought to himself, feeling quite proud of his son, but there was still opportunity for further development. The four of them stood at attention, knowing that Shinigami was in business mode, and they stood up straight, saying, "Now, as I mentioned earlier, things are going well with your assembly of souls transformed into demon god eggs. However, as a god of death, neither of you really needs to gather souls or make weapons," he said, drawing stern looks from Kid and Naruto. "And we don't agree about having partners being handed to us," Kid said as Naruto went on, "I want to create my own perfect weapon." Kid and Liz nodded in agreement, and Patty cheered. "We both preferred to create bonds that can only be achieved through hard work," he said. Looking at Naruto, Shinigami chuckled and said, "With 2 weapons, your gathering of souls will be twice as fast, Kid-kun. And a power such as yours, you'll have no problem handling the more challenging of opponents, Naruto-kun." Shinigami then turned to face the group and said, "Good luck, Liz-chan, Patty-chan, and Kasara-chan." The 2 Thompson sisters simply waved and said, "Yup," while a hidden weapon nodded silently. Looking up at his father, the child grinned and said, "I came here in the first place to try and gather a lot of souls at once. Aren't there any good targets?" he asked. Shinigami responded favorably to this, saying, "Well, if that's how you fell, I may have the perfect place." Except for one student who would have preferred to stay at home or train, everyone was scurrying around Shibusan for a brand new day at school as the laughing image of the sun shone down on a brand new day at Death City. 2 students from Sid Barrett's classroom, Black Star and Tsubaki, were walking down the halls with their weapons. The 2 saw 2 familiar faces standing in front of the mission board as they were moving through the hallways. "What's going on?" As Black Star welcomed their friends, Tsubaki said, "Oi, Soul, Macaw." When the 2 individuals turned to face their friends, Macaw, the girl, returned the greeting, saying, "Good morning." As Soul and Black Star gave each other high fives, Tsubaki said, "Good morning," which piqued his interest. "Did something happen?" she inquired. "You don't know what? Everyone in Shibusan is talking about it," Soul asked Tsubaki, a little taken aback. "Everyone's obviously getting impressed at my bigness." Black Star laughed heartily, his statement getting looks from all 3 around him. "Wrong," Soul replied, pointing up at the board towards one of the taken missions. "Look at that." Black Star went quiet all of a sudden. "Hey, you want to know, Black Star? Just who's taking all the jobs?" inquired Soul. At this point, Black Star's expression turned hilariously angry. "Of course I want to know. I don't give a damn about the tasks, but I'm furious with this guy for having the audacity to overtake me." "Then let's do it," Black Star said, removing Soul's smirk. "All right." With that, the 2 bolted down the corridors in the direction of the death room. "Hey, you 2, wait." Everyone else in the school just stared at the 2 as all that remained were their battle cries and a trial of dust. Macaw attempted to reason with the 2, but was unsuccessful. Tsubaki immediately appeared anxious as Black Star ran off without her. Kid was recalling the mission details Shinigami had given them back at Death City prior to their departure as he flew through the skies on his transport, Beelzebub, with his brother flying beside him along with what he called Shinigami jets, a pair of black-like objects by his sides that launched him into the air with jets of blue fire. A pyramid in the hot nation of Egypt. Anubis's ancient ruins. A necromancer witch is resurrecting many of the mummies buried inside the pyramid. She feeds the mummies people's souls and leads them on a march each night. Necromancers are a pain. They create new minions by calling forth mummies and using them to attack people. Thus, her power is growing quickly. Shinigami. You mean the Anubis pyramid? The basis of that kind of architecture is symmetry. Sounds good, Kid. The symmetry is back. Must I bring Mr. 4 Kid back? Naruto. To be honest, I was going to leave it up to a 3-star master, Shinigami. Naruto, Kid. Don't worry, Chichiyu. Kid paused to admire the pyramid as he retrieved his skateboard, saying, "Oh, what marvelous symmetry." Naruto hit him for this, saying, "Not now, Kid, we have a job to do. 'Kay?" As his partner's souls began to take shape beside him, Kid nodded. Liz complained that, "Staying as a weapon for too long kills my shoulders," while stretching the kinks out of her back. Patty countered, "It's huge." Looking up at the pyramid in front of them, she cheerfully cheered. "It's still amazing how something this huge can be built by the workers of a civilization that did not have modern-day equipment for such heights and weights," Naruto said, nodding at Patty's point. "The rulers of ancient Egypt used slaves to force them in building their pyramids," he said, drawing a frown from Kid. "Or perish if you ask me. I wouldn't be proud of it or find it admirable in any way." Looked at him deadpan, Naruto said, "Way to kill the mood, Kid." "Come on, let's go inside," Patty said, giggling at the two. "Wait, Patty, wait, Liz said in a panic before clinging to her younger sister's shoulders and trailing behind her while anxiously scanning her surroundings. She cheered before marching onwards into the construct. With a roll of his eyes, Naruto replied, "Come on, Kid, let's go before Patty touches something she shouldn't. That will get us all thrown into something else." Kid looked at Naruto with amusement, saying, "Seems Liz does not appreciate fine art." "Awfully dusty though," Kid grumbled, nodding as the two brothers entered, a cloud of dust sweeping in behind them. Liz complained, "I really don't like the looks of this place." "Oh, is the big bad gun girl of Brooklyn afraid of mummies, Liz-chan?" Liz said as the group took some time to check out the interior after moving in. The elder Thompson glared at Naruto as he teased, "It's okay, let's go." In an attempt to soothe her sister, Patty said. As he looked around the walls and ceiling, the child in the back said, "The interior is amazing as well." Liz and Naruto gave him deadpan looks as a result, thinking at the same time, he has a one-track mind. As the team moved deeper into the pyramid, they eventually encountered an issue. "Crap," Naruto cursed, glancing at the three tunnels that split off, one to the left, one to the right, and the final one straight ahead. "It seems we need to split up if we're to find this witch," Kid said, glancing at the three of them. Naruto nodded. Patty expressed a childlike wonder, and Liz had a slight nervous breakdown. "We'll go to the left. You're doing well, Naruto?" he inquired. "Yes, but are you sure splitting up is a good idea for this place?" he said hesitantly. "I'm good. Remember what Chichiyu said, that witch has a horde of minions at her call," Liz said, nodding in agreement with this. "Although we may be competent, there isn't much space for the majority of our skills here." "I'm sure we can handle it, Naruto," the child said, dismissing the worry. "Chichiyu knows we can manage this mission because he trusted us with it." "Yes, Ne-chan. Hurry up," Patty cheered, as she grabbed her sister by the arm and brought her along down the left tunnel. Kid trailed behind, and Naruto could swear that just before he lost sight of his brother, Kid's expression became troubled. He shrugged his shoulders, turned to the right, and continued, "There will be one fewer witch necromancer to worry about by today's end." "I don't like this. I hate these kinds of places," Liz complained, hiding behind her younger sister. "Sis, I have a question," Patty said, a thought suddenly occurring to her. "I was thinking, if you could go blind if you blink a lot, then everyone stopped blinking, what would happen?" she asked. Liz responded, looking around, "Well, nobody would want to go blind, right? So when everyone's eyes dried up, eye drops would sell like crazy." The question's total randomness helped her shift her anxious perspective. Patty thought aloud, then we'd better steal a whole bunch of eye drops." Liz looked at her sister and momentarily doubted her sanity. "But really, you can't go blind just from blinking," Liz remarked. Patty's eyes gleamed with understanding. "I guess not. You're so smart, sis." Liz merely sighed at her sister's lack of maturity. Liz noticed that Kid had stopped and asked, "What's wrong, Kid?" She thought, "You've been awfully quiet." Kid turned around and said, "But I can't help but think the frame in the foyer of my home is just a little off to the right." He paused, thinking, "No, it might just be my imagination." Liz yelled, "Who the hell cares about that now?" and snapped Kid back to reality. He grabbed his head as though in pain and said, "I care. What should I do? It's like the world's gonna end." With fear and panic in his eyes, he exclaimed, "Damn it. I need to go make sure," and began to walk back the way they had come. Liz grabbed his shoulder and put her other hand on Patty's, and the two of them walked on, dragging the irate child behind them. "Keep your OCD in check. You can look at the frame or whatever after we get back," she said. It's bugging me too much," the kid. "No, it's not, Lizzie, it's still bugging me," the kid. "Shut up, you little brat." Liz's march of rage came to a complete halt when she saw the enormous smiley face of a rather large mother. Her loud call for assistance reverberated throughout the pyramid. A cry reverberated from the tunnel, and Naruto halted in mid-step. "What the was that, Liz-chan?" he groaned, clutching his head against the incoming headache. Great, what did Patty-chan do this time? He asked. That girl sure knows how to have fun, Kid Mayo. Why couldn't she come with us? She complained, bored to no end, and he laughed inwardly at the comment in his thoughts. As he continued his journey down the dark tunnel, he sighed and said, you know as well as I do that kid doesn't fight unless he has both Liz-chan and Patty-chan to wield. And besides, isn't it better that we not run into any trouble before we find the witch than fighting an army of mummies? He received a snort in return and a quiet, heck no. Naruto could only sigh once more at his partner's intense desire to fight. The fact that she always wanted to fight whenever they went on a mission, never something simple, wasn't a bad thing, no. Kami's sense of humor, perhaps or Yami's kindness in responding to one of her kids. However, this had to have been done by one of them within 5 minutes. Naruto entered a spacious room containing a massive statue. The statue's body was that of a human woman dressed in ancient Egyptian clothing, but its head was that of a black cat with red eyes and yellow markings from the ears to the snout. It appears to be composed of bedrock and is easily 10 to 12 meters tall. As the big cat statue gazed down at Naruto's form, there were two overall reactions to this. Shit. Yay. Souls for the pharaoh, was the statue's loud, screeching voice as it raised its foot and slammed it against the ground where Naruto had just stood. Liz hid behind her sister and screamed in fright, mummies. Mummies, Patty. The mummies took the initiative, spreading their hands in a friendly manner or bringing them up to the mouths of the faces throughout laughing. Patty simply looked at them curiously, and Liz calmed down a little when she realized they hadn't been attacked yet. They're kinda CC cute, Liz said shyly, and Patty mimicked them, putting her hand to her mouth and laughing as well. After staring at her for a while, the face mask of the mummy Liz had confronted opened its gaping hole and licked Liz's face from the chin up, spilling blood from its mouth and eyes. It licked me, it licked me, it licked me, it licked me, Liz exclaimed, taking a step back and crossing her fingers and arms. Cooties, cooties, cooties. She cried out, while Patty simply laughed and said, tee, yucky, yucky. She composed herself, her shoulders trembling with rage, and said, how dare you, before turning around and saying, Patty, transform. This brought Patty to her side prepared, and Liz said, Roger, before turning to face Kid and saying, Kid, let's go. That's when the two sisters discovered something. Huh? Was Liz's answer. Was Patty's. The kid was gone. The two heard the sound of paper, and when they looked up, they saw a note floating to the floor. Liz and Patty leaned to read it as it hit the ground. To Patty and Liz, I've gone back for the time being because it's been bothering me too much. Watch your step because it's dark. Death the kid. Now away. Liz exclaimed in a panic as the mummies decided to attack while they were preoccupied. Liz entered game mode as she sensed their approach. Patty. Right? Patty performed a backward somersault as her form brightened and she transformed back into her gun form. Liz grabbed the gun and fired a barrage of shots that smashed the mummy's wrappings and ruined it as its Kishin egg soul flew out. The other adversaries decided to retaliate by striking from a distance and releasing their wrapped arms in an effort to capture the gunho woman. Stay back, they said. As Patty returned to her human form and caught her sister with a twirl of her fingers, Liz thought quickly and jumped back as she transformed into her gun form. Patty stopped a nearby mummy in its tracks by sticking the Liz gun in its mouth as it tried to lunge at her. Hey! Don't stick me in their mouths. Patty shot the mummy point blank, avoiding the one that crossed her path. Sorry, she said sheepishly. As Liz turned around and caught her sister, Patty performed another backflip and changed back into her gun. Liz aimed the Patty gun at their backs and fired as the mummies stumbled forward on top of one another. As their battle intensified, the pyramid's interior underwent a number of detours that led farther and farther into the historic building. The mastermind witch behind the resurrected mummies was chanting for a new minion as part of a ritual. She was dressed in a black, frayed robe and black leggings that stopped just short of her pointed-toed boots. The traditional witch's signature hat, a broad-brimmed hat with a pointed top, completed her ensemble. However, this one had an added feature, a mouth. Strange. She concluded her chant, heart within my body, heart within my mind, Pharaoh awaken, as the 6 Kishin eggs encircling her leapt up and crashed directly into the massive sarcophagus standing majestically behind her. The ancient pharaoh was awakened by the witch's magic, which was accomplished by the Kishin eggs. As its sarcophagus opened to reveal a single demonic eye staring out into the outside world, it boomed darkly, Pharaoh's wrath. A mummified arm reached out from the shadows and caught hold of the witch's head, pulling it into its casket. The necromancer screamed, "Ack, it grabbed me, it's picking me up, it's gonna eat me." She screamed and kicked in panic as she was pulled into the shadowy coffin, which closed behind her. The pharaoh's chamber reverberated with the sounds of crushed bones, signifying the witch's demise. As blood spurted from the sarcophagus's carved left eye, its thunderous voice said, "Play with the souls of my people, and you will feel the pharaoh's wrath." After being left behind in their classroom at Shibusan Academy, Maka and Tsubaki sighed, wondering what their respective partners were up to. Maka asked aloud, "Where in the world did those two go?" And Tsubaki simply agreed with her female friend. In relation to the two fools, they were searching for answers while racing across Shibusan Death's room, where Shinigami are typically found. Was the first stop. The door went unanswered. Their next destination was right outside the academy, where Maka's father, Spirit, was lounging. All they got was a wave from him. The front desk came next, however. The woman there was also unaware of their response. Despite their feelings of defeat, they persisted. Kid had just finished measuring the frame in his foyer at home, and he was thrilled to find that it was exactly right. Knowing it was all in his head, he turned around with pride and said, "Well, Liz and Patty are waiting. I'll head back. I guess it really was my imagination." Magnificent. Naruto swallowed the remaining Kishin eggs down his throat and stomped on the remains of a stone cat head. The statue had 4 inside its body, which was surprising because most enemies only have 1. This would explain why the statue was tougher and more intelligent than most. "Belch," Naruto remarked, mostly to himself. "Damn, never get used to how they go down so smoothly. Even weirder, they have no taste. I swear, almost like eating air if it was somehow solid." Complaining about the waste of time, he proceeded to walk through the gate that had been opened at the opposite end of the room, hoping that whatever got up there liked him would not cause any more delays. The voice in his head said, "Mayo, that was too easy," to which Naruto snorted, "Oh, don't be like that, Naru-kun," the voice said smoothly, adding, "You know you like it rough too." "Okay." Ignoring the voice in my head, he blurted out, receiving a childish, "Hey," in response to the jab. "Time for us to nab us a witch." As it entered Patty's gun form's bullet cartridge, a Kishin egg floated down. Liz locked the cartridge and Patty hurriedly changed back. "Well, we just recovered all the mummies' souls," she questioned Patty. "You split them exactly in half, right?" "Yup, if they're not even, Kid will get depressed." "Huh?" The younger of the two nodded. The two fell silent as Liz wrapped her arms around herself and Patty looked forward in curiosity. Liz complained, "I'm getting chills, and now there's a weird voice coming from back there." Patty was unaffected. She wondered, "I wonder what it is." "Let's go," Patty exclaimed cheerfully before leaving. Liz behind her growing more anxious. "No, let's wait for Kid to get back." But her younger sister persisted, saying, "We'll be fine, you're with me, sis." As she left, she failed to notice Liz's expression of complete and utter freaking out and defeat, distress, and hopelessness. No way. As time went on, the two sisters discovered that they were descending deeper and deeper into the pyramid. They saw that the noises were growing louder and that light was coming from ahead as they came upon some stairs that led down. As she moved behind her younger sister for protection, Liz remarked, "I think it's coming from in here." "Softly now. Softly. Getting a Roger, Roger," from Patty. "Stop making that damn noise," Patty demanded. The sarcophagus they discovered inside the chamber while sporting a menacing expression, forgetting her sister's concern entirely. When Liz saw her sister demanding the big coffin in front of them, her entire world fell apart. "You're making your big sister cry," she exclaimed. A disembodied voice said, "I'm the leftovers," behind Liz. When she turned around, she saw a trail of blood behind the dismembered hand that led back to the coffin, as well as a bloody hand that could only have come from the witch herself. Wrappings quickly erupted from within and down towards the two sisters, suggesting that the loud scream had agitated the pharaoh. Back at Shibusan, Soul and Black Star appeared to have discovered a lead when they encountered Sid Barrett, one of Shibusan's teachers. Observing two weary Shibusan students behind him, Sid said, "What's up with you guys? The bell for class already rang." Soul needed more time, so Black Star took a moment to gather himself before answering, "Don't you have students too? So where are you going?" Sid simply grinned and said, "I may not look it, but I'm a busy man. I have some business to take care of." After catching his breath, Soul said, "Before you go, we have a little problem we need to ask you about." Black Star finished for Soul, asking, "Who took the job at the ruins of Anubis?" Sid was intrigued now, saying, well, that wasn't one of my students. I'd think that would be a little too heavy for a student anyways." Black Star's attention was now drawn, and he replied, "Then who was it?" With a smiling face to put on Sid's mug, "The sons of Shinigami." "Sons? Are you serious?" Black Star repeated slowly, "The Shinigami?" While Soul was still taking in what he had heard. "I have no need to lie," was a very serious statement that Sid made as he turned to face the two. "The sons of Shinigami, their names are Death the Kid and Naruto Uzumaki Death." As his skateboard, Beelzebub, landed in front of the entrance once more, Kid said warmly, "We meet again, Anubis." as magnificent as always. I see. Using his board, he skated into the pyramid to find his partners. He thought everything was clear, but soon something did show up, a little spherical ball. It appeared to be an animal of some sort. Kid saw the ball and stopped his board as he knelt down to pick it up. It had 3 black circles, 2 on the head like ears, and 1 where its stomach would be. It also had 2 bitty red eyes, a button nose, and a mouth that looked like a cat. The sideways. 3. Mouth. You! He exclaimed as he picked it up, gazing at the flawlessly symmetrical item with a loving expression. What amazing symmetry. Magnificent, I said, raising it higher. Wait. The expression of love has vanished, to be replaced by annoyance. He noticed flaws when he looked more closely. The ball creature thing's left eye had 4 eyebrow lashes, while its right eye had 3. He yelled, "You disgust me," and then kicked the offending ball away, ignoring the ruined ball creature. I scampered forward and said, "How completely vile." In an attempt to locate them more quickly, he calls out for his partners to react. Liz, Patty. Liz's voice spoke back, almost tiredly. Kid, almost sensually. Patty beside her, as the pharaoh's wraps tightened around her body, pushing her breasts upward and encircling Liz's butt either inadvertently or through the pharaoh's own depraved means, lowering Liz's trousers so that some of her underwear is visible. The child had just arrived in time to come to a complete stop at the scene in front of him, his mouth dropping as his mind attempted to process what was going on. Patty and Liz were seen hanging up in wraps, which appeared to be pulling on their clothing and constricting them. Kid turned around and started to walk away as fast as he could, saying, "Sorry, looks like I'm interrupting." Liz screamed, "Wait, wait, 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 wait," and the wrappings swiftly spun around themselves into drill-like weapons before being hurled at Kid. Her cries incited the pharaoh once more. Kid turned and flipped into the air, shattering the wrappings and using his board as a shield as he sensed the attack. Kid looked at the sarcophagus and said, "What the hell is this thing?" As Kid, Patty, and Liz turned to see Naruto entering the chamber, they heard a shout, "It's about god freaking bloody time. I had to fight 4 obelisks in a room full of mummies before I even found this damn room. Do you know how annoying that is?" As spear-like wraps came straight at him, Naruto reacted quickly. From his right arm came a shine, and in a moment, a wall of wind protected him, shredding the wrappings. A demonic-looking black arm gauntlet with white lining emerged from the light, extending from his fingers to his shoulder. As he looked at the battle-ready sarcophagus, Naruto sang, well, it seems we arrived just in time for the party." He quickly lowered his arm, which burst into blue flames without burning his clothing, and it fluttered next to it. "Shall we dance, your majesty?" he asked. "Shall we dance, your majesty?" He teased the sarcophagus, giving Kid time to get ready. Naruto swiftly brought his arm downward, causing it to burst into blue flames, but not even his clothes, which fluttered beside it. He never took his eyes off the coffin as he said, "You two, hurry and transform into gun." Liz spoke wearily, "We can't," adding, "These bandages are sapping all our power." Kid was a little taken aback and alarmed by the information, saying, "What?" and kicking his board into the air. "Tornado flip," he exclaimed, pushing his board forward into a spin and severing the wraps holding Liz and Patty up, releasing them. Naruto was busy fending off the Kishin egg while Kid was getting ready for battle. As he flipped over dozens of drill wraps and ignited them with his gauntlet coated in blue flame, he mockingly said, "Come on, big boy, you can do better than that, right?" "Oh ho, afraid of little ol' fiery?" he asked, already knowing the answer. As the sarcophagus let out a roar of pain, he only did it to further irritate the mummy man. His Shinigami jets came to life as he launched himself into the air to dodge a flurry of spear strikes that had just crashed where he was standing, leaving a sizable crater that revealed the strength of this Kishin egg. "That's more powerful than the obelisks. How many eggs did that witch feed it?" he asked, glancing at the coffin while in the air. As she transformed from a fiery gauntlet to one covered in pure lightning, Kasara remarked, "I can sense he is stronger than those pathetic statues, Kid." Finally, some real action. "Yippee!" is the sound of its form singing like 1,000 birds screeching nearby. "Have a little taste of lightning, you wrapped up freak." Naruto retaliated with his electrified arm after dodging an aerial strike from the pharaoh's wrappings. Ignoring the joyful spirit inside him, his jets burst with power, propelling Naruto straight towards the coffin while his arm tore through the wrappings that attempted to stop him. The pharaoh realized the danger and gathered many wrappings to create a substantial wall. Naruto only had time to notice that it had only slightly torn it, leaving behind charred remnants, before he flew back to avoid the jagged spikes of wraps that stuck out from the wall. "Oh come on," moaned Naruto, "how can a wall of wrappings stop lightning?" The voice roared, "Face the wrath of the pharaoh," before its wraps flew off in various directions with the intention of hitting the flying boy in one way or another. "Shit. Naruto used his speed to dodge the barrage of spears, drills, punches, and raps that attempted to hit him because he had room to fly. Damn it, I can't keep this up. How long it takes just to get your partners ready. I mean seriously. We can't use more power to beat this Kishin egg since you're limiting yourself here to avoid damaging anything, Kasara retorted, acknowledging that Naru-kun was correct about keeping up. He pushed himself away from the coffin in the hopes of catching his breath, avoiding a blow that barely missed his neck and only slightly cut it. He said, "Any ideas, Kasara?" "All I can say, Naruto, is that kid better wake the hell up soon," Kasara yelled. "He may not have power like us, but he has enough control over his abilities to deal with this annoying old king without destroying anything." Kasara recognized Naruto's serious tone from the absence of a suffix in her name. "Hopefully," I thought quietly as I considered the final line. As more and more rappings appeared to leak out of his coffin and wave in front of and behind him, the pharaoh chanted, "Wrath, wrath, wrath." The raps appeared to dance exquisitely, but they are also lethal. "Oh, this can't be good," the child thought as they stood in front of the coffin in which they were attempting to survive. Naruto shouted, "Anytime, kid," and leapt back to dodge a shower of fist-shaped raps that rained down on him, causing him to crash into the ground and kick up dust. "TRA-NS form," exclaimed Patty as both sisters glowed and assumed their gun forms for Kid. "All right," exclaimed Liz. Kid took aim while holding them in his typical upside-down grip and placing his pinky finger on the trigger. He grunted from inside the coffin and said, "Here we go." He raised his guns, ready to shoot, and froze. The soul of the pharaoh, huh? Kid staggered backwards a little, but he held his ground when the pharaoh took the chance and struck him squarely in the chin with two powerful rap fists. Liz yelled, "Hey, kid, are you okay?" as she witnessed their wielder delivering a powerful double punch. The child simply leaned forward, his face displaying shock and discouragement. The pharaoh took another cheap shot, striking Kid in the stomach with a forceful underswing. He then hit Kid in the cheek, launching him into the air, and struck him again while he was in midair. Seemingly defeated, the child collapsed to the ground. Liz shouted, "What are you doing, kid? This isn't like you," in an attempt to get Kid to answer. Holding his front in agony, the child struggled to stand and said, "Look closely at him." He looked at the sarcophagus and said, "Perfectly symmetrical." "Huh," were Liz's and Naruto's dumbfounded responses. Naruto cursed as he dodged another round of raps that took the shape of spears this time, each strike barely escaping his body and landing on the ground as he flew around them. "God damn it, kid." Naruto began to scream, "If I get out of this alive, I'm bringing back Mr. 4 and locking you in a room with him, you hear me?" A rap took the shape of a blade and swiftly struck Kid, bringing him to his knees, using the opening Kid had given him because the boy would not shoot. Liz yelled, "Who gives a damn about symmetry right now?" as more raps whirled around and formed drills again. "You're about to get killed," she exclaimed as the drills closed off and began spinning quickly. "Aren't you going to use us and become a perfect Shinigami?" she asked. Kid's only response, given his inability to resist something with perfect symmetry, was, "It's pointless." The drills quickly descended on the fallen boy with the intention of killing him. Liz cried out, "Shit! Naruto-kun," to get assistance. Boom. "Shit, kid. Wake up already. I need help," Crack said as Naruto knelt in front of Kid with his gauntlet arm buried in the ground, creating a wall of earth in front of him. Glancing up in disbelief, he was unable to dodge as the drills penetrated his defenses and hit Naruto's body several times, sending blood flying everywhere as he passed Kid. "Naruto-kun. Oni-chan. Naru-kun," came the respective cries from Liz, Patty and Kasara, as they watched Naruto's body crash into the ground a few meters away from Kid's still kneeling form. Kid-kun," Liz and Patty cried out, trying to snap him awake from his OCD trance. "Wake up." The coffin boomed, Pharaoh's wrath. His wrappings began to form again, this time in the shape of a giant mallet, and then, wrath, wrath. Bang. He struck at Naruto's fallen body, still recovering from the blow he received while defending Kid. Anger. Bang. Wrath. 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 Bang. With every blow to Naruto's body, the pharaoh's voice chanted out, worsening his injuries. "Kid. Get up." Liz attempted to yell at Kid once more, saying, "Naruto-kun is going to die. You must take advantage of it." The pharaoh's strikes halting as the giant of a coffin slowly opened to reveal the darkness inside. A large hand reached out and gripped onto the coffin as it pulled out its body. "I will finish you both myself." A large mummy even larger than the obelisks that Naruto fought. came out of the coffin, its body completely inhuman. Its right arm nothing more than a giant cylindrical block, a royal-looking garment wrapped around its torso, no legs to stand, its left arm being mildly human, while its face was composed of ornaments and decorations. Two fan-like appendages on either side of its head, one shorter than the other, a round neck brace of some kind with 3 spikes going downwards diagonally, just below the larger of the 2 fan appendages, its face completely white with only one black eye, the left, with a small dot for a pupil, a candy cane-like object in its mouth, and a small button-like item on the middle of its forehead that had a face of a zigzag mouth and 2 dots for eyes on its back seemed to be a single black head of something or someone, a white mask with a line straight down the middle, a V-type smile, 2 red eyes and a black cowl over its head. The child sat there gazing at the mummy's monolith. All right on the left, correct on the left, right. He spoke to himself, as the mummy took one staggering step towards Kid, breathing slowly, his face contorted into one of pure anger. That really pisses me off. Liz said happily, I guess it's over, while Patty simply chuckled at the Pharaoh's misfortune. They were both relieved that Kid had finally gotten over it and hoped Naruto was okay now that Kasara had had time to tend to his injuries. What's wrong with you? You're completely uneven, the child remarked slowly. I've never seen anything so uneven before, he said, shakily getting to his feet. From where are you? Are you an uneven island native? You disgust me, he said, raising his guns and taking aim. Other than the area on your forehead. Taking a shot at the larger fan decoration. Hideous. What a useless decoration. Are you from worthless Arus? The Pharaoh asked, growing more irate. Hideous. As he repeatedly chanted, hideous, Kid's fast-moving shots began to dismantle the Pharaoh piece by piece, pushing it farther away from him while tearing its body apart. You're completely hideous. Kid was pushed over the edge by that last yell, because his last shot was a huge energy beam that blew a huge hole straight through the pyramid and out from the back, disintegrating the Pharaoh. The beam appeared to shoot from the mouth of a large, grotesque-looking black skull. As Kid's eyes descended to the Kishin egg soul, the only remnant of the Pharaoh, the smoke gradually dissipated due to the new opening. You don't deserve to exist. After recovering enough from the beating to get to his feet, Naruto complained, well shit, I guess I lost this round. Kasara-chan, huh? His partner, who had been concerned for her wielder and had put in extra effort to heal him during the attacks, sighed in relief at his words. As the group moved away from the pyramid under the laughing sun, Liz said, the number of souls we got today was an odd number, so you have 1 extra, Naruto-kun. Naruto rolled his eyes at Kid's complaint. Damn it, that's annoying. Nevertheless, Kid took the initiative and thanked Liz for the kind gift. All right, Patty, who was always the happy one, wholeheartedly concurred. And what on earth was going on with that Pharaoh? His unevenness was terrible, the child muttered angrily to himself. Naruto said, oh, give it a break, Kid, feeling a little irritated, mainly because he was unable to get the last shot in ending that Kishin egg. The big mummy is gone. Its unevenness will no longer plague this world, he concluded sarcastically and dramatically, to Patty's laughter, Liz's sigh, and Kid's smile. Kid said, almost sadly, at any rate, this is our final farewell to the beautiful Anubis, as the group turned to look one last time at the ancient pyramid they had just fought. Crack. The ornamental cat that hung over the entrance developed a big crack that widened as it walked up and down the pyramid. A few seconds after the cracks formed, the pyramid collapsed on itself. The child froze at the scene. Naruto merely twitched his eyebrow and lowered his jaw slightly. Patty laughed aloud and waved her arms at the scene. And Liz was the only person who remained composed. It has been destroyed. Fantastic. It's because you went so overboard, Patty cheered, observing the twitch in Naruto's eyes getting worse. How could this happen? Kid said slowly, attempting to comprehend what had happened. Huh, Liz said, seemingly unfazed by the entire experience, perhaps because she was so terrified inside that building that she saw it as poetic justice? Oh, hurry up, never again. I wasn't even the one to do it this time, exclaimed Naruto. He can't be seriously angry, he didn't cause that, can he? Liz shot him a deadpan look, questioning his sanity and suggesting that he might be worse than her sister. All I am is a worthless pig. I'm a piece of garbage, the child said in a defeated voice, indicating that he had once again entered his depressed world and Anubis is trash now, too. Oh no. I'm worthy of dying. He hammered the ground feebly. Naruto was left to fume and rant on his own while Liz and Patty went to work trying to lift Kid's spirits. Don't get so down. Patty patted Kid's back and said, yeah. I'm sure there are plenty of people who've destroyed a pyramid of 2 people. With appreciation and hope in his eyes, the child looked up and said, you guys, However, from his vantage point, he could clearly see their chests, which quickly irritated him. Why the hell are your chests different sizes? He let out a loud cry and leapt into the air, causing Patty to laugh, Liz to perspire, and Naruto to palm his face. Bro, will you please give their breasts some rest? When Kid and Naruto return to Death City, they are assigned to Shinigami's room, but they are not given any rewards for their destruction of the pyramid. The ghost of death told his sons, "I'll be seizing all of your gathered souls." As depression hit him once more, Kid knelt down and pounded the ground while Naruto could only sigh and hang his head in defeat, a rain cloud forming above him. Damn it. I have no value. I ought to die. Wish granted, bro, Naruto muttered as the child's head was driven into the ground and he entered a state of bliss. Shinigami stood there, his reflection gleaming in the mirror, sweating at his two sons' actions and thinking, "Ma, maybe giving them the Anubis mission was a bad idea." Shinigami was reminded, Naruto-kun, which caught his adopted son's attention as he scratched his head in concern. A big white hand that resembled a block appeared beneath him. "There's something I forgot to mention," he said, laughing nervously as his son gave him a questioning look. Back at Shibusen, Black Star and Soul were currently glaring at the mission board, specifically at the Anubis tag that was marked, "Completed." They were both annoyed that neither of them could have completed it and that it was finished in less than a day, especially after Sid stated that it was more difficult than the typical mission and that he wouldn't even suggest it to any of his students. The two idiots turned to face each other, as if speaking directly into each other's eyes, and nodded in agreement with one another. "We're kicking their asses when we see them. I am such a cute and wonderful lady," was sung by a feminine sing-song voice at Macaw Albarn's house just a few days prior. The singer was enjoying a soothing bubble bath at her killer's house. She made a "come here" gesture with her fingers and said, "Now for my back." Her words seemed to order the brush that was cleaning her legs to float up and towards her back. She continued to sing, but "I so love my pumpkins," as the brush worked on her back and her striking bust, pressing against the bathtub she was using. Pumpukin, that's my magic." It had been an exciting week for the young magical cat. Just a few days ago, Macaw and Soul broke into her home and occasionally her lover's home in an attempt to take her soul, accusing her of being a witch. NYA. Blair meowed after finishing her back scrub and relaxing in the tub while playing with the rubber duck she had with her. Blair misses her foxy koi. NYA, she complained to herself. She ultimately blew those two away every time they came into contact, only after Soul played a cunning move that appeared to betray Macaw and team up with Blair because she wanted to play with the side boy because of his transformation. Did she and Macaw manage to kill the Catwoman and have Soul devour her soul? Unfortunately, no one informed them that she was a cat with magical abilities rather than a witch. As a result, Soul and Macaw were punished and forced to begin collecting souls again, and Blair's house was destroyed during the confrontation as a sort of compensation. Blair chose to stay with Soul and Macaw, and it was also a bonus that she could constantly tease Soul and watch as the cool guy kept blowing away with nosebleeds. NYA. Blair smiled as he recognized the voice as he stared out the window while a loud, irate yell reverberated throughout Death City. "Foxy Koi is back. NYA. Foxy Koi is back. Blair's gonna make some ramen." For Blair's Foxy Koi sang joyfully as she skipped into Macaw's kitchen to make her love's favorite dish. NYA. Cheering happily, she jumped out of the tub and magically called her clothes to appear as her body dried up thanks to her magic. She thought for a moment, Blair hopes Foxy Koi doesn't hurt Macaw-chan and Soul-kun, but she dismissed it in her mind. Foxy Koi won't hurt Blair's new friends, so no worries, she said, skipping happily around the kitchen to make the one dish she had spent years perfecting for her special love. "Evans, Soul Eater, you hear me, but you're dead. Well, maybe Foxy Koi will hurt one of Blair's new friends," Blair said, a drop of sweat trickling down her cheek. The whole Shibusen school froze when a Macaw chop yelled and threatened to kill one Soul Eater Evans, with his partner Macaw reprimanding him. "Baka. This time, who did you piss off?" "I'm not sure." Soul pushed up from the ground in self-defense. "And goddamn woman. Give up using that book." "This is so not cool," Soul said, taking a moment to look in the direction of the yell before tuning out his partner as she began to rant again. In the misty night, the cathedral bell chimes, its song apparently calling for heaven to guide the lost souls. Or is it hell that is luring the innocent to their deaths? The latter is the case because this particular home of God has a priest who draws the people, the flock of God, to his ends so that he can feast. The stained glass windows that tell stories of the word of the Lord, ever clear and crystal as the moonlight behind them shines down upon them, are ever still and never ending, illuminating the vast emptiness of the cathedral with a display of colors from the outside lights. Crash. A huge robed man figure bursts through the cathedral's main window, sending the unholy person flying with a scythe. The symbol of death itself, the scythe carrier jumps back a distance to face down the Kishan egg, using the unholy man's body as a springboard before collapsing heavily to the ground. Rasputin, Dark Priest. The distorted voice of Sol Evans speaking, as the revealed scythe wielder Macaw Albarn stood in a stance and ready for any aggressive movement from the priest. Your soul is ours. Give it up, Rasputin remarked, standing at full attention in front of his would-be executioners. Standing tall, the man could be easily described as a large man in both terms of height and weight, be it from fat or muscle is unclear. As his black monk robe covers him from neck to feet, he is a bald man, wearing what appears as a Jewish cap, a large set of rosary beads, pupil-less eyes, and to top it off was the weirdest feature of the man: he had a thick long white beard, where at the end was shaped to resemble that of the Holy Cross. My body is immune to bullets. Unaware of his opponent's abilities, he soon found himself with a blade in his back and Macaw in front of him before he could comprehend what had happened. Macaw used a tremendous display of strength to drive the blade through Rasputin, killing him, his body twisted black and into threads, wrapping itself tightly before appearing to vanish, leaving behind the glowing red orb that is a Kishan egg soul. Macaw gently places his hand on the ground as Sol approaches Rasputin's descending soul. Sol's upper torso looks at the object that caused them some trouble, saying, I don't know how many bullets you've taken, however, I'll be taking your soul and turning it into a demon god egg. He leans forward, opens his fang-like mouth, and uses his tongue to scoop and consume the soul, ignoring the gradually growing noise that permeated the air. Aim on a brand new day in Death City. The ever-laughing sun shines down on the morning sky. The alarm clock is constantly ringing, but bash, bang, crash, woke up a very sleepy demon scythe from a wonderful dream, something about a monk. Souls are so delicious, he murmurs to himself, half dead and half asleep, all the while unaware of a presence making her way up his sleeping body. Cool days, and cool mornings, of course, for someone as cool as me, this particular morning was ideal. Soul-kun. A feminine voice spoke, as he felt a crushing weight being dropped on his stomach. It wasn't heavy per se, but very squishy. Looking down groggily, he makes out the image of Blair's grinning face. It's time to wake up. Thank whatever, cool, God was blessing him up there, because it only took a second to wake up when Blair was on top of him still wearing her clothes. Blair. Scrambling backwards, Sol tried to get away from the Catwoman before something happened, and with Blair around him, something always happens, her grin turning feral-like, as she slowly followed him upwards. Or you know, she said seductively. Macaw was in the kitchen making breakfast for herself and her roommate, totally unaware of her partner's problems in his room or anything else at the time. Good. Completed. If there were a god up there watching over him, he thought at this moment that he was a perverted one for coming up with such a way for a person to die death by suffocation of breasts. Blair teased Sol, loving how frustrated he gets so easily. Sol was currently battling off the biggest threat to his health, a pair of sisters who were suffocating him. He heard the eerie sound of his door opening as he persisted in his fruitless attempt to flee the terrible twins of death, and even worse, he heard Macaw's voice. He was dead. Sol. It's time to leave for school. Come on over for breakfast, please. Blair turned to the newcomer and gave the boy a moment to rest before saying, Good morning, Macaw. The rooster's cry echoed through the now quiet room, and Sol's face turned pale and blue as he felt Death's hand reaching out to him. This morning, this love comedy, he thought dreadfully, knowing what was about to happen. Sol. Macaw's monotonous voice whispered, There, he knew it, he's dead. Damn you, Blair, and your perverted innocence. Damn you, whichever god is up there playing his life like a comedy show. Damn you, creator of humans, for giving females that ungodly inhuman female fury and strength. You baka. Damn you, DMWA, for providing them with a second-floor apartment. This ain't cool at all, Macaw said, kicking and screaming her partner through his bedroom window and sending him flying into the streets, blood streaming from his nose from the vicious up-kick and strength of an angered woman. After some time, we find the two partners quietly waiting for class to begin. In the class crescent room, Sol, who had just recovered from his fight with female fury, sat slightly apart from his wielder, while Macaw was trying to block out her thoughts by reading a book. Sol decided to break the silence between the two because he was getting a little tired of it. Coincidentally, he knew how to say, Hey, Macaw. Be quiet, I've got my book open. Don't interrupt me, Macaw said in a monotone, still very angry. Why are you so angry? She asked, growing slightly agitated. Bookworm, he remarked absently, failing to notice how the remark caused her to twitch. She carefully closed the book and held it firmly in her left hand. Macaw chop. One solid strike to the head effectively KO'd her partner, as it left behind the smoking impact upon his head from where she struck. "So what were you going to say?" she inquired as though her actions were commonplace, which, regrettably, they are. Soul mumbled, wincing a little at his pounding head. "Just something I heard earlier, our old teacher." "What was it?" "He passed away, correct?" "The goddess of freedom stabbed him through the forehead," he said, turning to look at her. "You mean Sid Sensei?" Maka clarified. "The incident involving the goddess forehead, how about it? Have you heard that a strange person has been pursuing a student at Shibusen lately?" "Someone in the class next to us got the crap kicked out of him," Soul asked, observing that he was gaining more of her attention. He caught her attention there, saying, "And all the guys who saw the criminal say they saw the same thing. He was a zombie with a gaping hole in his forehead. You didn't have to hit me," was the feeble response to his eerie declaration, which caused Maka to scream in fear. Chop. That fear quickly vanished as she brought Soul down again with a classic Maka chop strike. "You're claiming that Sid Sensei was involved?" Ignoring her partner's suffering, Maka said, "No way, it's just something someone made up." The entire classroom was alerted to the teacher's arrival by the sound of the classroom door opening. "All right, quiet." Maka twitched when a man said, "Class is starting, attendance is a pain, so I won't take it. However, I will say this. The bell does not dismiss you," said the man standing next to the teacher's desk, who was now wearing a black suit and was clearly red-headed. "I throw you away." Many of the students in the classroom are objecting to the new teacher's bravado because of this. In an attempt to impress his daughter, he pretended to be cool and asked, "How was I, Maka?" "Amazing, right?" Maka simply gave a little tch and perspired at the obvious display her father was trying, so the intended effect did not materialize. Soul said absently, "You weird-ass dad is looking at us and making some dumb face." "Why, you're imaging it," Maka said weakly, not even knowing how to respond to such an attempt, and in front of her entire class. "And that is not my dad," she muttered, turning away from her desperate father. "Hi, Death Scythe. Are you going to be our homeroom teacher going forward?" Soul yelled. Spirit looked down at the attendance sheet and said, "It's only temporary, just until they find a replacement for Sid. By the way, don't forget the sensei. You little moron." "It's Death Scythe Sensei," he said, glancing up with a furious expression. "Okay, I'm taking attendance now." The rage seemed to go away. Soul became even more irritated with the man after that. "You just said you weren't taking it." "I said I wasn't going to take it for the guys," he said, dismissing his worry with ease. "Though, I'll take it for the beautiful women." And that made Soul's level of annoyance reach a breaking point. "Stop playing around, you old pervert," Maka said. "You're the worst," without being overly scared to say it in front of Spirit. Spirit eyed Soul and held up the clipboard while he glanced over the list, saying, "Friggin' noisy. Let's see, soul eating, it's their assessment worst," he said, writing a E in the box that was provided underneath it. "All right," he said, clapping his hands, "let's get started on class." "Hey, you bastard, what did you write?" Soul interrupted, not liking what happened in front of him. Spirit turned around, back to his students, seeming in thought. "Oh, that's right, Soul, Maka. You old pervert, what?" Even though he was on the verge of throwing a scythe whoop ass at him, Soul asked, "The Shinigami wants to see you. Don't worry about class and go." Spirit emphasized his point and shooed them away with his clipboard, leaving Maka and Soul somewhat taken aback and both asking, "The Shinigami? What does Shinigami-sama want, I wonder?" As the two of them passed through the Torii gates, which are designed to resemble guillotines, Maka thought aloud, "I dunno," to which Soul replied slackly. Neither of them saw the figure crouching atop one of the Torii gates as they were walking along. "It's Soul and Maka. Very stupid to turn their backs on me," said the figure, who turned out to be Black Star. He looked down at the two with Tsubaki in her chain scythe form and said, "Let's do it, Tsubaki." "Right." He stood erect and gripped both ends of the chain scythe, saying, "First way of the assassin. Stay in the shadows and hold your breath. Wait for your target to drop their defenses," he shouted. "Hi, this is Black Star." As Maka pointed him out, his cover vanished. "What are you shouting about from up there?" Neither of them realized that Black Star was attempting to hide, so Soul inquired. The scythe in Black Star's right hand glowed as his partner Tsubaki's upper torso emerged, and he could only twitch in embarrassment as he was spotted out. "We've been noticed," she deadpanned her wielder. "My uncontrollable star power must have backfired." Black Star attempted to pass out. "Well, whatever," he said, leaping down and leaving Tsubaki to return to her human form. "The ages can't handle someone as awesome as me. Tsubaki, you're going to swoon?" Turning towards his partner, Tsubaki could only hope to find a hole somewhere to hide. Right. Forgetting the awkward moment, the four of them approached Shinigami's mirror. "All right, I'll call him," Maka said as she started writing. 4242564. On the glass, death, death, murder. In an instant, the mirror appeared to pulse and ripple, and a ringing tone could be heard. The mirror then began to light up, indicating that Shinigami had responded to their call. "Hello, hello, Shinigami?" "Yes, indeed. What's going on?" The image of the Shinigami in all his glory appeared before the four students. "Thanks for coming," Maka said. "Scythe Master Maka here, Black Star's Demon Weapon Master Blackstar. And his partner Tsubaki." "Tsubaki, what made you want to see us, then?" "Soul. I have a little task I want to leave to you guys," he said bluntly, eliciting a collective "What is it?" from the group. "Maintenance," he said, leaning forward and raising his block-like hands as though revealing a secret. "What? By maintenance," Maka said, obviously upset. "What you force foolish people to do, you mean?" "I'm not going to do it." As he turned around, Soul obstinately replied, "That's not something for someone who's going to become the strongest Death Scythe to do." Shinigami straightened up and addressed them gravely, asking, "What is the duty of masters and their weapons?" He asked a question. "Yes," Maka replied almost instinctively, and with practiced ease her response was textbook-like. "To gather 99 souls that have abandoned humanity and transformed into Kishin eggs and one soul of a witch, to create a weapon of Shinigami-sama, a Death Scythe." "Yes. But at the moment, the number of souls you have collected," Shinigami joyfully responded, holding out both hands and forming a O with his thumb and forefinger, "is 0, is it not? Now is not the time to be laughing," he reprimanded the now cold assassin, turning back to the other three. "So, about the maintenance," he said, bringing the world of Maka, Soul, and Tsubaki to a crashing halt while Black Star simply laughed it off. Shinigami chop well. "Not anymore. Everyone has probably heard the rumors about Sid-sensei, a former professor at Shibusen." "You see? Yeah, but he was such a good teacher," said Maka, who was just as broken as Soul, while Black Star lay face first on the floor, blood streaming from Shinigami's attack on his noggin. "I told you it was true," Soul said, his world still broken but alive. "Yes, he was a good teacher here at Shibusen in life. But, the aura around him growing colder, he became a zombie, being released from the fear of death, and said he would make his students experience the same thing. So he attacked his students, creating a huge problem for everyone, and began his own lessons, all for self-satisfaction." Shinigami's aura changing again to a livelier feel. "However, it's obvious that there is someone who turned Sid-sensei into a zombie, pulling the strings from behind the scenes." "All right. Leave it to us, Reaper Ness," declared Black Star, who had miraculously come back to life with just a bump on his head. "So you just want us to beat the living daylights out of him?" "You're correct. Now don't take this as a threat, but if you fail at this, maintenance." The Lord of Death's voice was slightly startled by the boy's rapid recovery. He composed himself and said, "Now don't take this as a threat, but if you fail at this, maintenance." The next moment, he was leaning over them, block hand up and ready to strike, his face stern as he spoke gravely, "I'll have to pleasantly expel you all." And that caused the worlds of the three somewhat normal people to collapse even further. Expel." As the three said in shock, it was drowned over with Black Star's overconfidence. "No problem. Leave it to me, please." As nightfall approaches, the group arrives at Hook Cemetery, where bare trees dotted the grounds, hooks upon hooks adorned the foggy field, and the graves themselves were dreary and drab, their tombstones all carved with the names of the beloved departed, a few with fresh flowers, demonstrating that they have not been among the unfortunate few to have been forgotten. "Hey, you zombie freaks, get out!" And it was at one of these stones, a cross-shaped tombstone, that Black Star and Tsubaki found themselves standing in front of, gazing at the name, Sid, carved out at the bottom, while Soul went around yelling at Sid, obviously going insane at the thought of being banished. "Is this Sid's grave, Tsubaki?" Black Star said suspiciously. "What's this here for?" He's up and wandering around. His partner, who was hesitant to be at a cemetery, stood beside him. "He's got a grave here for the time being, I guess," she said timidly, "but it was either this or being kicked out." "I'm not going to be expelled. Damn it. Get out now." As the two partners resumed their conversation, Soul persisted in taunting, saying, "I never listened in your class in the first place. It looks like a regular grave to me." Black Star remarked. Tsubaki began to worry when she taunted Soul again, laughing hysterically at the end. "It looks like Soul-kun snapped," she deadpanned. "I thought I was going to be a great scythe master just like Mom. When did I fall so far behind in school?" Maka, who was experiencing a midlife crisis at a young age, said she was leaning on a tree when her body slid down farther onto the ground. Why is she feeling so down? Black Star, leave now. Come out, I said. Soul. I think you should be a little more worried, too. Tsubaki. Her partner is unaffected by Tsubaki's warning. Where are you at, you zombie bastard? Soul snapped loudly, getting irritated and more crazed by the second, and hey, for the heck of it, Black Star joined him in his crusade. Hey Soul. We ought to urinate on Sid's grave. Yes, let's do it. He proposed. I will also shit all over it. As Soul delved deeper into his own small world, his sanity began to fade. Macaw was still going through her life crisis as the two stooges began their taunts and call-outs. Maybe I can stand, yeah, I can stand, I can do it, but I can't get up. Tsubaki could do nothing but stare at the people who were one mission away from expulsion, and she felt herself quickly losing hope. All she could do was pray, somebody, stop them. Unbeknownst to them, a figure beneath them smiled as it sensed their presence, its red eyes gleaming in the shadows. Huh. Macaw's senses went into overdrive almost immediately as she sensed something strange in the area. Her crisis was put on hold because she barely had time to feel something grab her by the ankle before she was effortlessly lifted off the ground and turned upside down. At this point, all she could do was push her skirt up or down to keep them from falling and glare at the lifeless, cold man who had risen from the ground to support her. Are you afraid? Macaw asked, gazing into the emotionless white eyes of her departed sensei. He spoke, bringing his free hand up to reveal a sharpened stick in hand as a weapon. Seeing the would-be weapon, Macaw knows of Sid's reputation as a meister, and tensed at seeing the sharpened tool. You're scared, right? He repeated the question, but this time he impaled Macaw by thrusting the stick forward. That's Sid sensei, Macaw said uncertainly, but Soul responded. So it seems. His actions, however, helped Macaw escape in time, avoid being cut by her partner, and put distance between her target and herself. The light shattered from around the projectile to reveal Soul, firmly planted in the ground in his scythe form and acting as a shield between Macaw and Sid. Macaw Soul Star Black Tsubaki, the revived Sid spoke, not facing any of them as he stood in front of his grave. Good morning, good day, good evening. Grabbing underneath the right and left arms of the cross-shaped tombstone, he showed his strength as he pulled it out of the ground and hefted it under his shoulder and held it to strike. It's been too long. I always remembered to say hello. I was the type of man that was like that. Let's do it, Tsubaki. Right? Her tone and voice hardened, as they did for Black Star, both of them realizing that it was time to get serious. Her form shone and changed, then thinned out and expanded into her chain scythe mode, and Black Star, clutching his now transformed partner, was prepared for battle. It started, Black Star said, grasping onto Tsubaki's changed state as he stood at attention in front of his large mirror, with 4 people standing or sitting behind him, observing the proceedings. Sid Sensei, what are you doing? Macaw asked as she got ready as well, spinning Soul's changed body around a couple of times before getting to her feet. Sid sang menacingly, kill, dong, ding, dong. Being a zombie is great. He answered, so many things get better. Class is starting as soon as the bell rings. I begin the lesson. That's the type of man I was, he said, shifting his focus from Macaw to Black Star. I'm okay with it. Black Star grinned at the deceased teacher and said, it's been a long time since I demonstrated my enthusiasm for learning to you. We're going to be expelled, he announced. Come on, let's. As everyone got ready for battle, Soul reminded them, start your rotten, expired lesson. Sid said, you can escape from the terror if you become a zombie. The pressure of death disappears, as a noticeable smile appeared on his already happy face. Macaw answered without even blinking or recoiling at his icy demeanor. That's not right. That is not what Sensei would have said. She only saw it for a second, but Sid had disappeared in a burst of speed and Macaw watched as he appeared above her a second later, poised and ready to strike her with the heavy tombstone. Stop talking and learn. Sid and Macaw looked to see one end of Tsubaki's chain scythe form gripping firmly at one of the arms of the cross with the bladed end, but the strike from Sid's tombstone was stopped by a dead stop and the rattling of chains. You're small, and I'm big, Sid said. You don't have to express gratitude. Black Star bragged while gripping the chain firmly to prevent it from hitting. With remarkable strength, Sid began to twist his body and pull on the chain, saying, I'm fairly impatient. That's the kind of man I was. Unprepared for this, Black Star was propelled swiftly forward and hurled towards Macaw. The two collided and were pushed back, but neither of them fell to the ground as they steadied their feet and prepared themselves once more. I think you might as well quit without being intimidated, alarmed, or disturbed by their abilities, Sid declared. 1-star masters can't win against me. Zombie or not, it's over if we steal your soul. Sid Sensei is pretty strong, Soul retorted angrily. In life, Sensei was in a different league from us 1-star masters, Macaw noted. Doesn't matter to me, Soul said calmly, unfazed by the information. He was 3 stars, the highest rank of weapon master. Oi, sensei. You will be held accountable if you continue to fly around your grave in that manner. Do you really want to die again? With a dark grin on his face, Sid said, I can use my grave however I please. He held a cross in front of him and said, it's about time to start first period. He hefted the tombstone and held it firmly, holding it out towards them. Kill, dong, ding, dong. He sang menacingly once more, by the way, at the end of the period. You'll all be dead. Standing with his arms crossed, stood Naruto, but different from how he looked before. He wore black boots, black knee-length shorts with an eyelet-studded orange belt, and a blue pouch belted around his left leg. He also wore a short second belt with a large white skull on a silver buckle over his right hip, but left it unfastened and threaded the free end along the back of his shorts. A dagger in a white sheath hung at his left hip on his left arm. He wore a black and white striped bracelet around his wrist, an orange elbow guard. He wore a black hat with 2 white skull smileys, one frowning and one smiling, and a string of red beads sitting above the rim. 2 long orange side straps hung down sides of his hat and met at a large medallion of a skull with orange tassels. A.N. Portgas Diaz's outfit, slightly modified. What was really different however was the meter-long pushy red foxtail sticking out of his tailbone and pants, and the pair of equally red, with white tip, fox ears on his head and through 2 openings in his hat. But that's a different story. During his time at Death City, Shinigami spent many days and nights trying to stabilize Naruto's DNA because of the hand he had played on him when he was just a day or even an hour old. As a result, Shinigami gave Naruto an ultimatum. Either stay the same, 100% human, but have trouble controlling his powers no matter how much training he received, or allow him to start a ritual that would allow his DNA, Shinigami blood, to stabilize inside his body, as well as allow his weapon. Naruto chose the latter because he wanted to become strong to defend his new family, and as the ritual was coming to a close, the prisoner gave him a sort of gift in the form of a piece of DNA. After the ritual was completed, Naruto became half Shinigami, a quarter human and a quarter kitsune. Although he was only 25% kitsune, this allowed him to use kitsune's expertise in the arts of illusions, and it also gave him the extra appendages. Despite this outcome, Naruto never felt so free. It was also because of this outcome that he was able to find love, which he was unable to find back at Konoha. He uses illusions to hide his extra features to avoid being scared of being a fox, regardless of what his father claims. As Macaw and Black Star started attacking the Sid zombie, Naruto gazed at his reflection in the mirror, but his entire attention was on Soul, who kept glaring at the demon scythe weapon. Naruto-kun, you shouldn't glare at others, you know. He said it's pretty impolite, Shinigami said calmly, not even looking back at his son, who was standing behind him. Kid and Liz were seated on 2 chairs at the moment. The second was for Naruto, but he gave it to Liz, and Patty was standing beside Liz. I still don't like him, Chichiyu, Naruto said, never taking his eyes off the demon scythe. He then turned back to the screen to watch Black Star try to hit Sid from behind, only to be pushed back and hit by Sid's signature attack, Living End. He turned to face Shinigami and said, and I hate it even more that you refused to tell me his location, with amusing tears streaming down his face. Kid sighed, mostly to himself. You do know that if Chichiyu gave you Soul Eater Evan's location, you would beat him to within an inch of his life, correct? The man's love for the cat was so creepy, almost spirit-like, that Shinigami, Kid, and Liz couldn't help but perspire at that. And we don't want a recurrence of what happened to Spirit when he flirted with Blair that one time she came over, Naruto said, twitching his tail. Do we? As he questioned his brother, the child opened one eye. With his ears and tail lowered in submission, Naruto hung his head in defeat and said, no. Suddenly, he appeared on the opposite side of the room, crouching close to the floor and using his finger to draw figure 8s with a rain cloud on his head. But I miss my Blair-chan, he said. Kid and Liz sighed again at this, and Patty and Shinigami chuckled slightly at Naruto's expense, saying, don't worry about it. Naruto-kun. Shinigami comforted the depressed adolescent, saying, I'll let you and Blair back together once I know you won't kill Soul-kun. That made Naruto happy, and he stood next to Kid again, saying, thanks Chichiyu. After everything was in order, the group turned back to the mirror, which revealed that Macaw had narrowly escaped Sid's Living End attack. Taking her opening, Macaw said, we may be afraid, avoiding a direct hit from Sid's Living End attack by hanging her legs above her, keeping her head on the ground, and twisting her body enough to demonstrate her extreme flexibility, leaving the poor zombie stunned. However, that is what enables us to surpass everyone in strength. She used Sid as a springboard and leapt back up after kicking him in the face with all the strength she could muster from her position. Normally, I'd say not feeling fear is foolish. Shinigami was shocked to hear from a Shibusan student, or any human, for that matter, after seeing Maka's face standing fearlessly in the mirror. But Maka has the courage to fight off the fear, he said, turning his head, almost like you. Naruto-kun? Naruto smirked and simply shook his head, saying, no, Shichiyu. I simply accept that fear is all with a lighthearted grin, Kid said, but isn't it you who fights against Kishin eggs most of the time that even I would have issues with Naruto? I don't have the strength or courage to fight against them, so just deal with them. I accept fear. I just learned to deal with them, he said. Naruto shook his head once more. In addition, I have my friends, partners, and family supporting me, I said, glancing up at the mirror during the altercation. I'm not by myself. Shinigami nodded his head at what he heard. It seemed that Naruto had come a long way from the scared and insecure child he was when he was brought here. Shinigami couldn't thank the creator enough for that. That village has no idea the potential they had lost when they forsook this boy. I am so proud of my sons, he thought to himself as he watched the events at Hook Cemetery. Kid's smile wavered for a moment before returning full force as he too turned back to the mirror. Soul resonance. Maka and Soul spoke in unison, as power coursed its way through their bodies. Maka brought her scythe up above her head, the blade glowing white before it seemingly shattered and expanded, traditional scythe master craft. Soul's scythe, also grew in size, taking the form of a large round black outlined circle with two small extensions at the top and bottom, a pale interior with a single large red pupil, and a large crescent-shaped weapon with a blade that shone like a white stained glass shard with a blue highlight at the edges and what appeared to be a tattered mouth just past the pole that held it. Witch hunt. When Maka's footing slipped, she unintentionally brought the blade down towards the ground and struck behind her, striking Sid's still shocked body. The attack left a deep cut as it sailed through the graveyard and through the fence surrounding the cemetery, creating a trench in the ground as the blade beam passed through it and barely missed Black Star. What on earth are you doing? You're attempting to murder me, Black Star yelled out, scared shitless from the near strike that would have chopped his block off. It's Soul's fault. Do it correctly, fool, Maka retorted, equally mad as Black Star. What? Give up playing around. Why am I to blame? The fool is you. As furious as the other two, Soul retorted, you're absolutely crazy. Sid could just stand there, stunned by what almost happened, as the two quarreled. Such power. Maka returned to the offense and charged directly at him, leaving him with no time to think. Sid dug his feet into the ground as he saw the approach. I wanted to finish this quickly, too. Maka shouted out as she took a swing for Sid's head. As the strike passed, Maka noticed that Sid was gone. Disappeared? No, he excavated underground. Soul uttered those words. Maka didn't have to wait long because Sid hit her blank spot from behind, but Black Star blocked him before he could get the strike to land. Sid avoided the counter and went back underground, saying, damn it, he dug underground again. Yeah, I know, Black Star. Tsubaki said softly to her partner as Tsubaki took over. Black Star started to explain. Sid is using the first way of the assassin. Be covered in shadow and stay your breath. Tsubaki. Black Star said gravely. Let's get one step ahead of him. Right? Tsubaki's chain whirled around the two meisters. Lie in wait for your target to let down its guard. Black Star stood motionless with his left hand in the single hand sign ram, focusing on locating their target as the chains moved and stretched around them. Don't try to upstage me, he said. There doesn't have to be two assassins, Maka said, standing back to back with him and looking over her shoulder to see Black Star at work. You can't take away my attention. Having finished their formation, Tsubaki's chain surrounded them in the shape of a star, Trap Star, at the center with them. His breathing stopped as he waited. Second way of the assassin, without ever leaving his focused meditative state. Concentrate. I can hear it the wavelength of his soul. He passed Tsubaki and is coming this way. Black Star opened his eyes, glared at Sid, and instantly pulled the chain in his hand as he slammed into him less than 2 seconds later. Trap Star, activate. A couple of chains around Sid's arm and torso stopped him in his tracks, and he was powerless to stop them as the remaining chains began to coil and move. What? Sid, Ai, Maka, Yoi, Shinigami. Black Star utterly disregarded the fact that he had trapped not just Sid but also Maka and Soul, laughing triumphantly in his victory. What the hell? You also capture me? Maka screamed and kicked, saying, you got in the way. Black Star cheerfully replied, not even considering her threats to be serious. The Lord of Death cheerfully replied, yup, turning to face his sons and their partners. Looks like the end of this chapter, Shinigami said, observing the small victory the group had gained before the mirror clicked off like a computer screen. Now we just need to find the mastermind that turned Sid-sensei into a zombie, Kid said behind his father. Who is it, Shichiyu? He asked, giving his father a serious look. You are aware of Death Scythe-kun, the master who forged the best weapon available today, right? Shinigami asked, getting a curious look from Kid but a deep serious frown from Naruto. Yes, I thought it was Maka's mother. What about it? Asked Kid. In fact, Shinigami corrected, Maka's mother was Death Scythe-kun's second partner. Naruto flinched, and Kid's eyes widened slightly as he sat up straight. You mean what is his first partner? Shinigami disclosed, Dr. Frankenstein is the mastermind. He was Death Scythe-kun's first partner, and the most powerful master Shibusen ever produced. But why would Stein-senpai? Shouting in disbelief, Naruto asked, but why would he do that to Sid-senpai? Stein and Sid were the two individuals Naruto most admired. They, along with Sid's partner, had saved him all those years ago and taken him to his new home, so learning that one of them had done that to another left him feeling extremely shaken. I take it that Frankenstein liked to analyze, experiment, and dissect situations. With a look of comprehension in his eyes, Kid said, he probably did this to record data. However, what precisely is the question? Maybe he did this out of sick pleasure? Liz attempted to make a suggestion, but Naruto rejected it. No lost in thought, Naruto remarked, Senpai is always a person of reason. He is a person who won't do anything unless it serves a purpose. He twitches his ear, but I haven't seen him since Sid and he deemed me action ready when they finished training me, he said, whether it's to reach an end or to gain something of interest for him information. What was that? Perhaps 3 or 4 years ago. I have seen and spoken with Senpai many times, but never long enough for me to notice any changes in his behavior, he said with a head tilt. I would say that Sid offered to be transformed into a zombie because he trusted Stein and I grew up under their wing during training. However, I am unable to determine what benefit or end this offers them. It seems those years under Stein and Sid has done wonders for his observation and analytical skills, Kid thought to himself as he sat there listening to what his brother had to say. He too knew Stein, and from what he knew, what Naruto had said matched exactly how Stein portrays himself. Shinigami stood in silence, having listened to Naruto's analytical skills. If he could show it, he would be grinning like a madman who found water in a desert. Excellent, Naruto-kun. He turned around and turned on his mirror again, revealing Maka and the others standing in front of Stein's home. As I've said before, Professor Stein is the strongest of all the masters to have graduated from Shibusen. He said he is very powerful. Kid stated, he's the master that was the original partner of Chichiyu's Death Scythe. Liz pointed out a small issue with this statement, saying, didn't you tell them to go take his soul? At that, Naruto became a little more animated, saying, they're going to have their work cut out for them. Liz, who is always upbeat, turned to her sister and said, if you went, sis, it would be over in a second. Liz gave her gullible younger sister a frustrated look after that, saying, I'm just a typical weapon. You think too highly of your older sister, Patty. Before I hit the ground, I would already be dead. Regarding this maintenance, that seems a little harsh, don't you think? The Lord of Death merely chuckled when Kid asked his father, there is no question they will perish. One Frankenstein was sitting in front of his computer in his dark workroom, his dull green eyes scanning his screen and checking his typing for accuracy. Suddenly, he stopped, sighed softly as the smoke from his cigarette blew in front of him, and said, I just can't seem to clear my head. He reached up to his head and twisted the bulb that was stuck in his head. It was time for the host to welcome guests, so he pushed his wheelchair back, leaned back, and grinned slightly. Sensing the arrival of his guests, he kicked his desk vigorously and rolled backward using his wheelchair. Back with the maintenance crew, they were now in front of Frankenstein's house, with Tsubaki's hair still tied around him in chain form to keep him from escaping. Whether anyone noticed or not, Tsubaki was actually giving Black Star sideways glares for the first time. This was because Black Star, in his blissful idiocy, flashed Sid Tsubaki's underwear and was able to break the man that he used to be into admitting that Frankenstein was the culprit. This is why Tsubaki was glaring at her partner and silently vowed to use her sharpness the next time he tried. So this is where Stein is? Soul inquired as he idly surveyed the area, observing how everything seemed to be stitched up. When he heard a sound, he glanced down at his feet and saw a stitched-up mouse making robotic noises. This guy, he said. In any case, what sort of individual is Professor Stein? Maka asked. Not liking their situation, her question never answered. As a lock was heard being undone. Looking forward, they watched as one of Stein's house doors slowly opened. Soul was the first to hear the noise approaching them. Something's coming. They all listened intently as the sound drew closer and closer until a figure appeared at the door. Clank. Then, with a startled yelp, Stein's body fell backwards as his chair came to a stop, causing him to crash. The four of them just stared at the professor in shock as Stein got back up and picked himself up. Damn it, before he turned his bolt again and sat down in reverse sitting, he muttered, I'm still a little out of it. Oh well. Standing back up, he grabbed his chair. Okay. The four outside were a little perplexed when he said, let me try that one more time, and went back inside with his chair. Hey, somebody stop him, Soul said, receiving a hesitant look from Macaw. But, first impressions, Black Star admitted, I'm a little worried, and Tsubaki agreed. The group stopped and waited as Stein's figure reappeared. Clank. Another yelp of surprise from the doctor left him flat on his back once more. What a goofy professor, was the group's unanimous thought. When Naruto saw one of his mentor's strange characteristics again, he thought, still the same as ever Senpai. With a twitching brow and a drop of sweat, Kid and Liz turned to face Naruto, their brows raised, and they both said, that was your teacher, rather than asking in a deadpan voice, Urasai. Shut up, he retorted, disregarding Patty's chuckle. He was lying on the floor. Unconcerned, Stein turned to face his guests and asked, can I help you? Everyone was startled back by his voice. You're Stein, right? You're the one who's been making Sid Sensei attack the students, right? Soul questioned as Macaw assumed control. Oh, so that's it, he said with a gentle smile as he went back to enjoying himself in his chair. So you guys are Shibusan students? Do you harbor any resentment toward us? Macaw began questioning. Not really, Stein retorted bluntly. My motivation is very straightforward. Observation and research, nothing more. Everything in this world is an object for my research, he said, resting his head on his arms that were resting on the chair's back cushion. That obviously applies to me as well. Hey, Soul. She whispered to her partner, aren't you getting a weird feeling? Suddenly, Macaw felt something strange coming from the professor. Something about his eyes felt like he was penetrating them and into her soul. Huh? Must I be? Soul whispered back, their own souls becoming visible to the professor's very eyes as neither of them noticed one of Stein's abilities taking effect. The blue glow from the two partners' souls told Stein everything he needed to know about them. You guys' souls' wavelengths are pretty unstable, he said, drawing everyone's attention. A cynical, sarcastic soul, and a truly hard worker. The souls changed until they took shape in his eyes. Macaw's soul was a light blue ball with two pigtails at the top, two angry-looking white eyes, a small button nose, and a small frown. Doesn't look like they're resonating at all, Stein said plainly. What? Are you able to see the souls of living people? Are you an expert? And to be able to see through our personalities, he's definitely a first-rate master, Macaw clarified, not liking their situation anymore. Especially with Stein's crazy smile after mentioning his apparent status. Macaw, her partner whispered, you're good at seeing him too, right? Of course. Your spirit is trembling playfully, Stein remarked. How cute, while Soul stared at his partner, Macaw, in disbelief. Urasai. Urasai. Give up searching. She let out a scream and crossed her arms over her chest, giving the impression that someone was watching her. Yes, indeed, please stop talking. Yahoo! You're boring extras, stop talking. Was the loud cry that made everyone on the ground look up. Now it's time for my monologue in front of the audience. Black Star stood proudly on the stop of Stein's house, looking down at the people who looked up to him in his world. People were looking up to him and asking, how'd he get up there? At the same time, 9 people were there and watching, and one person was the only one encouraging Black Star. Crouching with his hand out, he said, I don't know anything about seeing souls, as if I cared about other people's souls. To see my own soul is all I need, Black Star remarked as he leapt from the structure to confront Stein. Stein laughed heartily at Black Star's words and deeds, saying, you're an impressive one. He started by saying, what an extremely obstinate, violent soul. Black Star's soul was in full view for him to see. It was the same color as Soul's, but its features were the most different from the rest. It was smiling maniacally, its eyes giving them a dead serious yet hyper look, as if it enjoyed a challenge. It had little spikes sprouting all over its body, which appeared to be as wild as his hair. What Stein found most shocking was that, in contrast to all the other souls, Black Star's soul appeared to be floating in one place. There aren't many partners around that suit your soul, is there? He thought, gripping his bolt. It wasn't so much a question as a statement. I'm going here. Black Star's battle cry rang out as he charged directly at Stein, and in a spectacular display of speed, he was able to cross the distance in a split second and was in the air, ready for a round kick to the face. However, Stein blocked the kick languidly, using the momentum from the kick to spin himself around in a 180-degree spin. Refusing to back down, Black Star charged for another kick, but with a slight twisting push, Stein made the full 360-degree turn and blocked the kick once more with the same arm. Black Star pushed the boy away and landed with his back to the professor. This was a huge mistake because Dr. Stein took advantage of the situation and pushed his chair in Black Star's direction with the extra speed from the chase and Black Star's head turning. He used his other arm to deliver a deadly elbow to Black Star's face, sending the boy flying farther away. Concerned, Tsubaki called out. "Oh, I get it," Stein said, turning around in his chair to face the voice and taking a moment to look at the person he surmised. "You must be his partner because you're very accepting of other people and have a cooperative personality. So you harmonize your soul with his." Then, Stein surmised, solving a small puzzle for their small group. Tsubaki's soul was the same color as Makaw's. Its white eyes revealed and conveyed a sense of timidity along with the small smile it adorned. The soul also had a single ponytail, but unlike Soul's soul, this appendage was extra long like her real hair. "What on earth are you?" Soul insisted. This man was, to put it mildly, unnerving. He had not only solved each one of them like a puzzle, determining their partner and personality, but he had also demonstrated that he was quite capable of handling his own with little to no ease, as demonstrated by Black Star's attempt. "All right, I think I've gathered enough data," Stein said cheerfully, his eyes displaying a satisfied smile. "Shall we start the experiment?" The club's name, Chupacabras, is displayed in large, highly decorated letters above the entirety of the club's front, easily matching the structure in size. The building is located in Death City, on the 8th District, B Block, and is rather small and plain looking. If the laughter and shouts were any indication, the building was currently serving its frequent customers. The sign is adorned with hearts and lights that are turned on at night. The interior features an enclosed bar with several stools surrounding it, a separate payment area along one wall, and numerous partitioned sections with individual small couches and rounded glass tables across from it. The interior decor is primarily pink, with many pieces lavishly accented with golden trim that also generally conform to a heart theme that is displayed throughout, even appearing on the front door in the form of a heart-shaped window. The club is lit by a large number of candles, which are both present on the numerous tables and built in along some of the walls, as well as a separate changing area for the main female staff. One Spirit, Albarn and Blair, the newest member of the Chupacabra, are currently seated at one of these tables. "My drink is completely gone," Spirit's loud, obviously inebriated voice yelled. "You can definitely put them away, Papa." "Just a moment," Blair said, raising her finger and gesturing to the glass and bottle on the table. "Pampampukin, Pampukin." As the wine bottle emerged from the ice bucket and poured itself into the glass, she chanted. "You're on your third day at the cabaret, Blair-chan? You're getting in quite a bit of practice." Spirit inquired. "That Foxboy is going to be angry with you, right?" He obviously still remembered that encounter with Naruto when he flirted with Blair that one time. Even though he was intoxicated, however, since Blair wasn't present, they were at a cabaret club, drinking, and he was a flirtatious monster who didn't know when to stop. "Many thanks, NYA. But don't worry about Foxy Koi," Blair reassured, "because it was he who suggested this so that I befriend him. But you went to school today, didn't you, Papa?" Shifting the subject, "How was it? Did you and Makaw get along?" It never hurt to try to play doctor and make things right, even though she was well aware of Spirit's attempts to win love from the daughter who didn't want to be with him. She turned to serve him after the drink had finished pouring and stirring, only to see his dejected expression. "She ignored me," he said in distress. "That girl just gets mad no matter what I do." Blair threw in an innocent, "Makaw's so cute," comment, "but your divorce is finalized next month, right? Boost your spirits." She seemed to exacerbate his depression despite her best efforts to lift him out of it. Speaking soberly and humbly, "Tell me to cheer me up all you want, but as far as parenting goes, my ex-wife said she doesn't need any alimony or child support. What good am I to Makaw?" Blair tried to reassure him again, saying, "That's not true. I'm nothing as a father. A parent does more than just give money." Fight. At the end, Blair clenched her fist to support her argument, but the distraught father ignored her efforts. "Money is another form of love, right? It's awful that there is nothing I can do to help Makaw." Blair, who actually received a single tick of her brow, persisted in trying to alter the atmosphere, but from a different angle this time. "Then, while you're here, turn those negatives into positives." With a oomph, she raised her fist in the air and said, "And find yourself a new wife. Make use of that lecherous side that got you divorced. Cheers." "No," followed by Blair's most recent attempt. "I can't even imagine getting remarried, ever since I grouped up with Stein," he said gloomily at the mention of that man, looking up from his lap with a glare on his face. "My life sucks." With soul in demon scythe form, Makaw charged at Stein, Ignoring any strategy and launching a powerful swing diagonally at the doctor's body, Stein used his chair to wheel slightly to the left, avoiding the blow, and he pushed with his left foot to avoid another blow as he rolled to the right and away from Macaw. Master Macaw, scythe? Stein muttered in thought, seeming to try and remember something. Not letting Macaw get her balance after her second failed strike, he placed his feet on her back and pushed, making the girl stumble forwards while he went further away. Many would think he was giving himself distance, but Stein did it with purpose. As he rode back, he head-butted Black Star in the face, sending the boy flying back once more holding his nose. Stein was and still is effectively fighting two Meisters and a weapon without even leaving his chair, turning the bolt in his head a few times. What was it, about a scythe, Master Macaw? He pondered aloud. I know I've heard it somewhere before, and then, as though solving a puzzle, he pounded his closed hand into the palm of his other while making an understanding face. Oh. Are you the daughter of Spirit Senpai? He asked, pointing a finger at Macaw. Spirit was depressed again as he told his story back at the Chupacabras. This time, a new servicer named Riza was listening at his side along with her partner Arisa. Riza has been a member of the club for a long time, lost in his recollections, Spirit muttered. The days I spent with him were definitely hell. Spirit? Soul asked in confusion, but Macaw explained, my dad's name before he became Death Scythe. She forced herself to stand beside Soul and turned to face Stein, who was sitting there smiling. But how do you know that? She asked. He leaned his head on his hand and reminisced. Ah, I can remember it now. Senpai's sleeping face. He received strange looks from those who were listening. Spirit said hesitantly, as though recalling a painful memory. He would come in while I was sleeping and perform experiments on my body. He cried out in desperation, the image of Stein's shape looming over him while Spirit slept. A chalkboard behind him filled with equations and details, but it was made worse by the fact that Stein was holding a scalpel and grinning wildly. He buried his head in the coach and exclaimed, for 5 years. As she patted Spirit on the back with a cat-like grin on her face, Blair joked, wow, Papa San, you're so thick-headed. Riza asked, surprised and a little afraid, F5 years? And you never noticed? Blair said, ever the naive and happy Catwoman? I thought it was weird that I kept getting scars and I had no idea from what, Spirit admitted. If my ex-wife didn't notice, he might still be doing it today. He screamed he had no idea that Stein was reliving the same memories as him, but he saw it as a gift from God based on his research before Cammy stepped in. Those who were not personally acquainted with Stein were unable to contain their perspiration as they listened to Stein recount his experience with Spirit back in the death room. He was your sensei for a number of years and you never once knew about that? Liz asked. Turning to face Naruto with a curious expression and a hint of hesitation, he responded with a slow shake of his head. He and Liz shivered when Naruto said, in all honesty, he spoke slowly, I always wondered why Stein Senpai seemed to be cheery from time to time. Now knowing why he was, sorta creeps me out. So Stein-san is known to be a man who dissects, experiments, analyze, theorize, is well versed in hand-to-hand combat, apparently, is known to be the strongest Meister to have graduated from Shibusen, and also was the first partner to Chichiyu's death scythe known as Spirit. Kid rattled off, then turned to Naruto and asking, how are you still sane? This coming from a person who suffers from OCD with anything symmetrical, Naruto muttered as he turned to face his brother. But I guess it's because I was more under Sid's wing rather than Stein's, he said with a twitch of an ear. Don't get me wrong, Stein Senpai taught me a lot about my soul and the soul wavelength as well as physical training. But I mostly trained under Sid Senpai for guerrilla warfare and assassination. And thank God that I did, he muttered, receiving grateful nods from Kid, Liz, and Shinigami. Nobody was curious about what two Steins would bring to Death City. With a slight frown on his face, Stein said, I see. He looked at Macaw intently and said, so you're his beloved daughter. The daughter of the woman that stole my previous test subject, he said, smiling, his cigarette still burning at the corner of his mouth. Gazing at Macaw, his eyes were gleaming. I'd love to dissect you. Blair questioned the still distressed father, but you were his partner for 5 years, right? With curiosity, I'm sure you synced your soul's wavelengths, she said, knowing enough from Naruto about some aspects of Meisters and weapons despite her lack of knowledge. Spirit said with a mixture of respect and dread, his insight and competence is far beyond what my wife, ex-wife, who forged me had. He raised his head, his face dead neutral, but his eyes gleamed with utter seriousness. Stein is a prodigy. Even if he's just the least bit curious about his opponent's weapon, he can make use of it pretty well. Stein chose to commit the crime for the first time since their altercation. With his right arm raised and his palm out to strike, he charged forward on his chair. As Macaw braced herself, Soul warned, "It's just an open palm attack. Guard it." Right. Before she knew it, Stein struck, and she defended. She pushed the scythe's pole forward, thwarting the attack directly. However, she was unprepared for Stein's counterclockwise rotation of his hand on Soul's scythe form. Macaw failed to notice the strange gesture because Stein struck with a startling push back after a brief burst of static and a tiny explosion. Macaw was startled and flew away from Stein as a tingling sensation went through her body and Soul's, causing them to grunt in agony. Macaw leapt twice before collapsing a few feet from the always composed doctor, feeling the same pain as Macaw. Soul pushed herself off the ground and looked up at Stein, asking, What was that? What the hell did he do?" The scythe master saw tiny sparks of electricity dancing around the arm that Stein had struck. "I don't believe it," Kid muttered incredulously. "Weapons have physical attack strength, of course, but moreover, it gets amplified by the wavelength of Master's soul to become more formidable. But even so, he managed to knock down his opponent without passing his soul's wavelength through a weapon." Kid looked sternly at Stein's arm reflection as the static danced a few more times. Kid and Liz heard the laughter and turned to see that Naruto was the source. "Like I said before, Stein-senpai taught me a lot about the soul and soul wavelength. He is a foremost expert on the concept of it," he said. "He also explained and basically drilled into my head the relationships weapons and masters have, saying that it was the principle of how he achieved such expertise in soul wavelength combat." Shinigami took over and explained the idea in a simpler way, saying, "The sound of an electric guitar by itself is very small, but when connected to an amp, the soul's wavelength is amplified, and a larger power is brought out." A block hand appeared with one finger, and Shinigami pointed to the now standing face of Dr. Frankenstein on the mirror and said, "But Stein-kun is letting us hear the wavelength of his soul with just the guitar." Kit said softly, "Unbelievable, I can't imagine how he would be when holding a weapon." Naruto laughed again, but this time it was in a sarcastic way. "Trust me bro, Stein-senpai with a weapon, not a pretty combination for whoever is fighting." Liz questioned, "Are you able to fight like he does, Naruto-kun?" But all he could do was shake his head. "No number, I can't. Stein tried teaching me, but because of how unstable, he said my soul is, that achieving anything like he does is near impossible for me. He said that to achieve what he can do, it takes a person's soul to be adaptable and calm, concentrated and foremost focused," Naruto told Liz, sighing and rubbing the back of his head in mild frustration. "Unstable?" asked the child, who had never heard of his brother's soul before. Kid accepted that. Naruto simply shook his head once more and shrugged, not telling. "It's something I'm not proud of, and would rather keep to myself. Sorry bro, for now." But he was certain Naruto would eventually reveal despite their familial ties. The two hardly shared secrets, however. It can wait if it was serious. Right then, Stein said, getting up from his chair to confront his guests for the first time, "Where should I make the first incision?" he asked, twisting his bolt a few times while maintaining a semi-bored expression on his face. He emphasized his point by making a snip-snip motion with his fingers. Soul shouted, "What's wrong, Macaw? Pull yourself together." In an attempt to attract his partner's attention, there was a problem awfully wrong with her. "Your breathing and your wavelength is all wrong." Macaw screamed and ran toward Stein, ignoring Soul's words. "Wait, Macaw." As Macaw brought the weapon down, Stein responded by raising his left hand only in response to her raising her scythe. She received the same outcome as before. Another electrical pushback from Stein's counter shocked Macaw back, causing her to release Soul in agony and send them both hurtling back. Soul yelled, "You idiot." As his reflection in the scythe's blade revealed that Stein had caused more damage than the last time. As blood was streaming from his mouth, Soul returned to his human form and landed roughly on the ground, but the pain prevented him from moving. "Macaw." Stein held onto one of Macaw's hair tails and pulled her back against him, refusing to let her go. He removed her coat and raised Macaw's shirt just enough to show off her smooth, flawless stomach. "Such smooth skin," Stein said, taking a pen marker from his pocket. "Now, where should I insert the scalpel?" He drew 2 lines on Macaw's stomach where the two met, making Macaw even more terrified of being dissected. As Macaw struggled in his grasp, he brought her head closer to his and said, "Maybe I should scalp you and make your skin into sandpaper." With a straight face and an unwavering voice. A familiar voice he had forgotten said, "I'll knock those freaking glasses right off your face, bastard. Don't you forget I'm here." Black Star charged at the doctor from behind, but Stein didn't care because he knew who it was. "It's no use," Black Star declared. "You're not the only one that can kick ass with just the wavelength of your soul." As he prepared to launch one of his most lethal blows, Stein exclaimed, "What?" But Black Star had already begun to execute before he could react. He stomped the ground, twisted his foot and brought his body along with it for full force as he struck Stein's back. Black Star big wave. He twisted his body sideways, bringing his right arm up with the elbow spearing out while his left arm was brought above the right with the fist aligned with the right's elbow. Certain kill. Black Star's soul wavelength passed through Stein's back and into him as Black Star struck, releasing Stein's grip on Macaw since many dark balls with kanji writings exploded from the striking point when Black Star's soul's energy invaded Stein. The area surrounding Stein and Black Star seemed to be enshrouded by what appeared to be Black Star's soul. What the? The child watched in astonishment as he sat there. Liz gazed at the scene with interest, while Patty watched in awe. How? Stein Senpai said Black Star's soul is extremely obstinate and violent. How could he do what Senpai is capable of? Asked Naruto, the most distressed of the group. Shinigami just yohahoed at that, knowing that the young assassin's use of that small technique would be quite unexpected. Just as you could expect from Black Star, his soul's wavelength is extraordinarily large, and to deal a blow with his soul's wavelength is truly exceptional. Becoming pensive, however, Stein has experience on his side. Naruto stared at the mirror, his eyes simply changing from shocked to serious. It showed Black Star slowly lowering his arms and stepping back to observe what transpired, while Stein stayed standing where he had been hit. There is more to him than meets the eye, he said, fixing Black Star with his gaze. What is his past? Well, isn't this a surprise? Stein asked, raising his head without flinching from the blow. Macaw turned back to Soul, staring at this in disbelief. Soul was equally astounded to see the professor standing, seemingly unaffected. What's going on? It didn't work at all, Soul exclaimed. The only person who could guess what had happened was Black Star. Given his uneasy feeling, he might be correct when he says he cancelled it out. I checked your soul's data earlier, he admitted, pushing up his glasses as he turned to face his assailant. If I know the nature of your soul's wavelength, then I can match it with my own. If the wavelengths are the same, then no matter what the attack, it will have no effect. At the moment you performed your technique, you and I became like a weapon and master, in a sense. As Patty and Liz listened, Kid asked in a deadpan tone, he can do something like that? Naruto smiled slightly at his former instructor. Observation, and in accordance, a highly adaptable soul, Shinigami replied gravely, that is Stein-kun's greatest strength. And his most powerful of tools, Naruto continued. Senpai didn't graduate as the strongest Meister in Shibuzen for nothing. Glancing back at the mirror, Stein turned to face Black Star, who had not yet moved because of shock. He's finished. Naruto now had a serious expression on his face. Stein forewarned everyone, I'll be taking up the offensive from here on. A grin appeared on his face as he dashed towards Black Star, who appeared in front of him in an instant. He raised his hands, hovering at the sides of Black Star's head, and his smile changed to a sickly one. Stein unleashed hell on Black Star before he had a chance to take action. Stein positioned his head in the center and transformed his hands into conductors using the wavelength of his soul. Lightning streaked through Stein's hands, through his head, and toward Stein's opposing hands, shocking Black Star's head in the process. Tsubaki cried out, Black Star, as she, Macaw, and Soul were left with nothing to do but watch in horror and despair as Stein launched a powerful electrical assault. All of the listeners were unnerved by Black Star's screams of pain as the attack lit him up and the electricity ran through his body. Soul yelled, stop it, but was ignored as Black Star's screams seemed to get louder. Stein gave his attack one last burst. Black Star's mouth was dripping blood, and he appeared to be dead on his feet. Everyone watched as he fell backward and hit the ground, splattering the ground with blood. Immobile, Black Star. Kid got up from his chair and said, I can't stand this, we're going to. He stepped down from the platform and began to leave. Alright, Liz said, a little taken aback that Kid would be involved. K. exclaimed Patty. I'm going to. Senpai is going too far with this, Naruto said with a little tch. He then turned around and began to follow Kid. Hold on, Kid, Naruto, this is their maintenance, not yours, Shinigami said, turning around with a hint of surprise. Besides, you're both Shinigami, not students at Shibuzen. Kid halted his stroll and said, in that case, I'll enroll at Shibuzen. He looked at his brother questioningly. Count me in too as well, Chichiyu, Naruto said, grinning as he nodded his head. The two brothers turned to face their father, saying, wherever Kid goes, I go. Can't let my bro have all the fun. Kid grinned and turned back to the exit, calling out, Chichiyu, enroll us as students, please. Liz, Patty. Before he resumed his walk, Naruto walked beside his brother while the two Thompson sisters acknowledged the call and trailed behind. Shinigami exclaimed in surprise, hey, wait. But his call was not answered. He couldn't help but feel a little uneasy and anxious when he realized he was confined to a corner he wasn't sure, though, so he said, "Oh, dear." Black Star lay motionless as Stein turned the bolt in his head, unfazed by what he had done. At this point, they didn't even know if he was still breathing. Of all of them, Tsubaki was the most shocked because all she could do was stand there and cry a little when she saw her partner in this condition. She could have protected Black Star in some way if Sid hadn't been chained up with her hair. Tsubaki turned to face Sid when he said, "I won't try to hide or run away. That's the kind of man I used to be." Go to him, in a tone of regret and sympathy. Sol turned to his partner and sneered, "Stein, you bastard." As he stepped in front of Maka to confront this insane doctor, "You won't get away with this. Maka, get on your feet," he said. Maka fell to her knees, shock visible in her eyes, and he heard her say only, "No way," along with fear. "Huh, what's wrong?" Maka said, seemingly in a trance. "I can see it, and for good reason." Maka caught a glimpse of the soul of the opponent. As well as being unnerving, Stein had a big soul. The soul was enormous, its power was radiating, and its diameter was at least twice, if not 3 times, Stein's height. His soul was blue, but due to the force it was exerting, Maka could only see the big screw bolt that was inserted into it and the faint stitch marks that covered the soul's body. She was looking at it with concern and incredulity. This person's soul dwarfed everything they had previously encountered. It also frightened her. "It seems you could see my soul," Stein said with a slow smile after noticing what Maka had just seen. It was more of a statement than a question overall, and the fact that Maka was trembling and appeared pale helped to answer it for him as well. Maka was so overcome by fear that she was unable to think clearly. It can't be, our levels are too different. Since Sol couldn't see other people's souls, he was beginning to worry about whether Maka was being affected to this extent. "Hey, what's with you, Maka?" After acknowledging their predicament, Maka slowly lowered her body and hung her head, saying, "No, we can't win." Sweat was streaming down her face as she openly expressed her horror and fear at what they were up against. "Get a hold of yourself. What are you doing, you idiot?" Sol rushed up to the downed Maka, knelt down, grabbed her shoulder roughly, and shook her in a desperate attempt to wake her. "Urusai, Sol, you're only talking because you can't see his soul," Maka said, slapping his hand away without even looking up at him. Sol remained silent during her outburst, while Stein remained motionless at his spot and casually turned the bolt in his head while observing the scene. Sol became agitated. "What the hell does that have to do with anything?" he yelled. Asked Maka, "All you saw was a soul. It's not like you saw the future." She shook her again and gripped her arms tightly. "Don't give up before we even started fighting. Don't you want to make me into the world's best death scythe? Weren't we gonna make your dumbass womanizing dad shut up once and for all? Raise your head. That's all I'm trying to say." Maka looked up at her partner, almost like a lost child. After grinning sharply, Sol turned to face Stein and said, "Take a good look at him. This while time you've been out of it, he's been waiting." Stein was still standing there, smoking without taking a single step. When he was done, Maka turned to face Sol and asked, "Not a bad guy, right?" And a grin appeared on her face, her eyes reviving their resolve. Sol noticed this as well, and instead of grinning like a shark, he grinned naturally and said, "Right, let's do this cool." Maka proudly stood up again and said, "Sorry, Sol, I know I'm a bother." "No worries," Sol said before reverting to his demon scythe form. Maka grabbed Sol and spun him around in the air above her multiple times, increasing his speed before cutting the air in front of her with a downward blow. Resonance of souls. Resonance of souls, Stein observed with fascination as Maka and Sol's power and strength significantly grew. The master sends its soul's wavelength through its weapon, and the weapon amplifies it, sending it back to the master, he said gravely. Watching the glows of their souls emerge and envelop them, they can then release a massive wavelength by repeating this. Sol's voice came loudly from the scythe, resonate to the limit. As power surged through both of their bodies. "Right," was Maka's response, straining her body to its limit. "How surprising," Stein said, smiling at the prospect of such promise. He said to the two, "You want to end this with one shot, it seems." He continued to watch as his words appeared to have an impact on the two, as their power continued to rise. "Hey, you two. Show me your souls," he said, his smile turning to a playful smirk. "Traditional scythe master craft," Maka exclaimed, bringing her scythe back behind her as it gradually formed the double-sided white blades for the first stage of their attack. The final form of their attack appeared in a flash of crystal shower. She launched an upward thrust attack, bringing the now transformed scythe with her. It was pushed upward, straight for Stein's open arms, and the blade dug into the earth, witch hunt slash, as though preparing a counter. The blade's force created an UP kick of wind and dug roughly into the ground. Stein remained where he was, sent a pulse of his soul's wavelength into his hands, and, with both hands on either side of the white glowing blade, literally caught the attack head-on. Since the blade was only a few centimeters from his face, the blow forced him to use his foot to support himself as he skidded back a few inches. Now, it was a fight between the masters, with Stein standing there with his hands on the blade and Macaw continuing to push and power her strike forward to stop it. Stein didn't even blink or recoil when he saw the wind pick up as it blew away from the witch hunt/attack. Crack. Not even when the pressure of the power caused one of his lenses to crack. To think, they can control the witch hunt to this extent. Macaw was finding it difficult to exert more pressure as her strength began to decline. Stein's eyes grew wide in retaliation as he saw the chance, saying, "But it's still imperfect." Then, as his hands smashed through the blade's shape and broke the witch hunt slash, he literally cracked the blade under his own pressure using his own soul wavelength as the counter. It not only destroyed the witch hunt form but also went straight after Macaw, sending her flying and crashing into the ground while Soul clattered to the ground. Soul, as she heard the insane doctor approach her defeated form, Macaw, who was barely conscious, was breathing heavily and in short gasps due to Stein's wavelength damaging her body, which prevented her from moving or defending herself. There was a look of horror in her one open eye. Stein was unfazed, to put it mildly, by her down form breathing heavily. "Looks like you're just barely still conscious." Stein knelt down to face her, moving to the front so she could see him, but before he could say or do anything, a light shot between them and took the form of Soul, who hovered over Macaw's body in a protective manner, saying, "I won't let you lay a finger on my master." "Then I'll start with you," Stein said, his expression changing from a slight frown to a tiny smile as he looked at Soul while the boy defended his meister. As the boy shielded his meister, Stein's frown turned back into a small smile as he looked at Soul. "Then I'll start with you," he said, reaching out with his right hand. Soul could only prepare himself for whatever the madman might do to him, but what he didn't anticipate was Stein placing his hand on Soul's head and saying, "You get a passing grade." "Huh? Macaw? Huh? Soul? The maintenance lesson is finished?" Stein spoke, only getting a "wah" from Soul. As the boy looked up in confusion, a gentle smile on Stein's look, completely destroying the crazed mad doctor's smiles he kept giving them before. "Protecting your master with your own body, you're a decent youngster." I'll say it again." Soul's perplexity increased with each passing moment. "What? You see, Shinigami-sama asked me for a favor." Stein chose to explain to them. "He asked me to assist you all with your maintenance." "But you killed Black Star, didn't you?" she said, gesturing to the location of Tsubaki and Black Star. "You say some pretty funny things," the assassin remarked, still weak from his shocking treatment. Black Star raised his head in response to the call-out, refuting the accusation. "He's alive." Before having another idea, Soul muttered to himself, "But what about Sid-sensei?" "Yeah, sorry about that, you guys," Sid said, shrugging and looking embarrassed as his accusation was once again shot, burned, and thrown away in the wind. "I was never a man who played tricks on others. However, I was alive at the time." "Don't play tricks on us. What on earth is the matter with you all? All of this was a ruse." Soul shouted in anger. Disbelief and embarrassment all mixed into one. Macaw was the worst off, having felt as if she was going to die. All she could do was groan and weep. "No way." "But still," Stein said, pushing his glasses back onto his face as his mischievous expression changed. "It was fun knocking you little kids around." Macaw and Soul could only look at him in shock and horror, their eyes twitching as they shared the same thought. "He really is sadistic." "So, everyone," Stein said in a cheerful tone that totally destroyed the seriousness he had just a few minutes earlier, as he sat on his forgotten chair and began spinning quickly before stopping with his arms out in a welcoming manner and sparkles in front of his eyes. "I'm sure you're all exhausted from today. Please spend tonight at my house." No is not an acceptable response to me. No way in hell. While Tsubaki could only sweat, Macaw, Soul, and Black Star immediately responded angrily to the mad doctor. With a look of complete horror and self-loathing on his face, Kid moaned and groaned as he knelt and raised himself off the ground, wallowing in a pit of self-despair. "Damn," he said, "I am of no use. I should die." Why Kid was in his own gloomy world just 5 minutes from the death room may be a mystery to some, but the answer is straightforward. He remembered something. Next to him were the 3 individuals who had been following him a short while before. Liz, who was understandably furious, Patty, who was laughing idly at Kid's free show, and Naruto, who was complaining to himself while occasionally glancing at Kid's form with a twitching eye. Not again. How did this occur? I think I forgot to fold the ends of my toilet paper into triangles. The child exclaimed in horror. Naruto's eye was on the verge of a twitching mania. Liz moaned. Maybe, but only? Do you not always remember to do it? Anyway, you're way too obsessive-compulsive, she said, trying to reason with him in the hopes that, by God watching, this could be resolved swiftly and painlessly. Those guys will perish if we don't move quickly. For the time being, why don't you disregard the toilet paper? As though listening to something sacrilegious, I can't ignore it. There's no way you can be properly saved by a half-witted god of death who can't even fold the ends of his toilet paper, the child yelled. I'm sure those students will all feel the same way and reject me. By this time, Patty had gone into a fit of laughter. Naruto let out a loud sigh and simply turned to leave, saying, wait, Naruto-kun, where are you heading? Perplexed as to why Naruto was departing, Liz inquired, aren't you going to help with the Stein situation? It's already been 10 minutes or so, Liz-chan, Naruto said, twisting his head to catch a glimpse of her out of the corner of his eye. Senpai only needs 2 minutes to finish people of their level off. He turned back and resumed his stroll, waving casually, I don't know about you, but I'm going home to sleep. Chichiu will undoubtedly complete the paperwork tonight or tomorrow, and we'll be able to see what transpired with those 4 at Shibusen. Ciao, the last word said, and Naruto's form disappeared in a puff of red smoke. When the smoke cleared, a blondish small fox with glove-like fur-covered paws and a red-tipped tail was walking away from them. It had Naruto's hat on its head, and its long, rabbit-like fox ears protruded from the hat's earholes. Its tail swished back and forth as it strode down the hallways back home. Picking up where they left off, Liz ignored her younger sister's cry of, kawaii, cute. Even though she thought the same thing, instead, she focused on the task at hand, which was and regrettably still is getting Kid out of his funk. Come on, Kid, that's not true. They'll all greet you with smiles. She assured him, hoping he would buy it. Coming up with an idea. How about this just to be sure? We'll run back, and then we'll run out and save them, with enthusiasm, she said. I'm not interested, said the child. Why not, Liz? If I didn't remember to fold it, what would I do? The toilet paper would bring my entire world crashing down, the dejected and sickly-looking child uttered. I wouldn't be able to live. Then perish, Liz yelled, her fiery temper flaring as her eyes went demonic red as it stared at Kid's sprawled form on the ground. Ignoring once more her little sister, as her laughs escalated at Kid's expense, she ran her hand through her hair in thought. What do you know? Naruto-kun's right. She turned around, took hold of Patty's arm, and the two of them walked home. We'll find out what happened when we arrive at Shibusen. As she left, she turned to face her back and said, Oi, Kid. We'll meet at your house when you're at last yourself, okay? Liz and Patty left the irate Kid out in the hallway, assuming that either he would go crazy and pass out while Shinigami brought him home, or that he would simply go back to check the toilet paper and then return home. Liz is betting on the latter, saying, sometimes I wonder if partnering up with him was a good idea. Looking up in thoughtfulness, she said, well, we have a better life now, so guess it is, despite his OCD. The young Meisters and weapons were at Shibusen for a new day in their lives as the ever-laughing sun shone down on Death City. The only people who weren't enjoying the new day were Macaw, Soul, and Blackstar, who were all suffering from the maintenance from the previous night that almost killed them. Tsubaki was the only one who wasn't because he hadn't engaged in combat with the insane professor. Macaw was not doing any better as she rested her head on her arms against the desk. I had a dream that the professor performed an experiment on me, she moaned weakly, which would explain why she appeared so exhausted. Likely nightmares, after fighting against Stein. I'm so freaking tired from yesterday, Soul said, resting his head on his hand as he tried to ignore his pounding body, being too lazy to do anything about it. Oh right, they finally decided on our new teacher, right? Soul said, recalling a story that had been told to the class some time prior. What if it's your day again? I asked, staring at Macaw. The Scythe Master said, give me a break. She didn't want her already terrible day to get worse. The sound of wheels approaching the classroom was followed by a yelp of surprise, a clank, and the newcomer falling backwards onto the ground. He then entered a spinning drive and stopped in the middle of the classroom. Revealing himself to be Dr. Frankenstein, unconcerned with his position, he pulled out the student textbook and opened it to a random page while the class watched in shock, amusement, bewilderment, and horror. All right, let's start class. I think this is the first time, Soul said, horrified. It can't be. Macaw, who was literally as pale as a sheet, said, damn, I've wanted to see my dad. Blackstar muttered, he stole my spotlight. Aside from attracting the class's attention, Blackstar was not at all disturbed by the doctor's appearance. Today, we'll be doing frog dissections, Stein informed his class his bolt's constant turning and grinding reverberated throughout the quiet classroom until it finally dawned on him that, yes, things would be interesting from now on. Naruto was taking a leisurely afternoon stroll through Death City in his fox form, his face concealed by his black hat. He was enjoying the rich atmosphere the city offered, and it helped that he received many pats and ear scratches from civilian children as well as the occasional teenage to young adult female, although he was afraid of being perceived as a fox when he was in human form. When he was in fox form, he was just a normal-looking fox, despite wearing a hat and having rabbit long fox ears. "So Naru-kun," Kasara's voice said in his head, "are you going to see Blair-chan at her workplace? Again, what was it called? Chupacabras?" "Duh, I miss Blair-chan. Despite having you with me 24/7, Naruto thought to himself as he enjoyed a nice ear scratch from a little 5-year-old girl who laughed and ran back to her mother. And besides, Chichiu will never tell me Soul Eater's place himself unless I wasn't going to maim him, and since I received that phone call from Kitty-chan telling me about her new work and friends, I can finally see her after a week and a half." The smile had vanished. In response to his plan for Soul, Kasara laughed and said, "It seems you're taking more of the Kitsune heritage than you realized, Naru-kun." Kasara had always wanted Naruto to be more fox-like because she had grown up watching him grow up and she had enjoyed one of his main traits: his genius side as a prankster in addition to being skilled illusionists. Kitsune foxes were known for being pranksters. Here it is. The Chupacabras. In fact, Naruto was so engrossed in enjoying his walk and listening to Kasara that he unintentionally ended up in front of the tiny business. Nice place, friendly atmosphere. He heard the cheers and laughter inside, and he said, "Lively too. Guess I'm glad I suggested this idea to Kitty-chan." He moved up to the door, his tail growing to reach the doorknob, and he opened it with a good grip and twist, walking right in. "Baka Spirit. My mate, get your hands off." All throughout Death City, the death scythe known as Spirit let out screams of pain and agony that sent shivers down the spines of every man who heard them, while some women cheered them on, victims of Spirit's womanizing ways. The scream of pain reached Shibusen, and Stein abruptly stopped his lessons. Everyone in the classroom stopped and turned toward the window, toward the scream, the angry yell, and the poor soul that followed. Many people remember the voice as the one that gave Soul that loud death threat not so long ago, and those who did turned and silently prayed to the now pale and perspiring Soul Eater Evans. All right, the entire class snapped their heads in his direction, many with their jaws hanging open, while others, Soul, became even paler and more ill-looking. "It seems my old pupil has found Spirit Senpai," Stein said casually in observation, and he fixed his glasses before turning back to his dissection lesson. "Senpai should have learned by now," Stein said. "Never cross my pupil's path," he said with a twisted smile on his face, knowing that what he is about to say will soon irritate someone, especially when it involves his cute little mate. Once more, what was her name? Yes, Blair? Thump. His smile grew as he looked up at Makaw's slack-jawed, incredulous expression in the now cold, lifeless soul that was lying on his desk. Yes, the crazy doctor's life as a teacher was going to be interesting from now on. His smile turned sadistic. It was fascinating and enjoyable. "Please, be merciful." Crack. "Oh. That's not how my legs are supposed to bend." The doorman who handled the money and greeted customers had left the scene as soon as Naruto appeared, and he was certain that he did not want to see how protective the fox boy was after hearing tales of his exploits and protectiveness over Blair. As said magical cat talked about him non-stop on breaks. The howls of anguish and cries for mercy now filled the silent cabaret club. Blair, on the other hand, was sitting by a coach with her two new friends, Riza and Arisa, who were watching the free entertainment with wide eyes and absent-mindedly shoving popcorn into their mouths. Blair was grinning as she held the popcorn she had made out of thin air and shared it with her two friends. "No." Crack. The three girls recoiled and, "Ooh-dee," as they witnessed Spirit's loud cry as he was transformed into a pretzel. What was even more terrifying was that Naruto was still in fox form while doing it. With surprise and a hint of fear in her voice, the bun-haired Riza turned to face the surprisingly upbeat Blair seated beside her and said, "Be Blair-chan? Shouldn't we?" As Naruto popped Spirit's shoulder behind the poor redhead, she flinched and said, "Shouldn't we stop this?" "Nya." Blair dismissed it, saying, "Don't worry about it. Riza-chan Foxy Koi knows when to stop." Crack. She ignored Spirit's cries and tilted her head thoughtfully. "I believe he does. Or was that just for the kind guy who always gives me fish?" Blair received a deadpan expression from Arisa, the short-haired woman, who said, "You think?" Blair just shrugged and threw more popcorn in her mouth. The fox boy gave the magical catwoman his trademark fox grin and said, "Yo, Kitty-chan." He waltzed up to the sitting females in his fox form still. leaving behind the crumpled, destroyed, twisted, and highly unrecognizable body of Spirit. As the poor flirtatious man was finally out cold, his entire body looked like a big ball of limps sticking out of everywhere. It was unclear how Naruto was able to do this to a fully grown man in a small fox body. Blair leapt at the offer and disappeared into a puff of purple smoke. When the smoke cleared, Blair's signature cat form, complete with curly tail and hat, was visible. NYA, Foxy Koi, it's a date. With their tails entwined, the two animals departed the cabaret club in a cozy silence. Despite that being absolutely adorable and charming, Riza said, blinking, turning to face the motionless figure that had once been a man before turning back to the door where the magical animals had left. Arisa was still too stunned by the fate of the death scythe known as Spirit to do more than nod. Remind me never to get that foxy boy mad. It's been almost a week since the Spirit incident at the Chupacabras, and almost a week since Stein became the new Shibusan teacher, but more importantly, it's been a week since Soul experienced a strange phenomenon that almost gave him a heart attack. Blair returned home that day with a huge, contented smile on her face, and she didn't tease him. It was an omen, a sign. However, he was not thinking about such paranoia today. As he and Black Star sat waiting outside Shibusan, there were rumors and conversations about new students coming to the school. But the students were also allegedly the Shinigami's sons. Back at Shibusan, in the class Crescent Moon room, Stein smiled happily at the prospect of his favorite subject. Let's see, today's class will be a dissection lab. However, the students didn't share his enthusiasm, as they all moaned in frustration. With a mixture of fatigue and annoyance on her face, Macaw slowly raised her hand and said, we've only done dissections since you became our teacher, Professor Stein. She made a point, but it was eventually disregarded as Stein's smile took on a sadistic tone. However, you see, Stein pointed to the cage on the desk and explained, today we'll be poking around inside. The specimen is very different from the typical frog or mouse indeed. This, one of the endangered species, Kuku-san, was in the cage. The class as a whole was stunned and shocked by what their new teacher was going to do with an endangered species after learning that the bird was currently staring wide-eyed at the insane professor. Macaw, the rational voice, decided to speak again. But that's an extremely rare bird on the verge of extinction. Again. Stein disregarded her words, merely chuckling lowly before turning to face the bird in the cage. I won't let them go extinct before I see their insides, he said with a smile that never faded. Macaw gave up. This guy is completely out of his mind. Tsubaki, who appeared upset and anxious at the moment, let out a sigh, which she turned to see. Stein used this opportunity to notice two students who were missing. Where are Soul and Blackstar, by the way? Has something taken place? They're always skipping, Macaw said, dismissing the worry. Those two idiots need to pull it together. They're always known to skip classes occasionally, so their absence today wasn't any different. However, they should just work together if they really want to be together, Tsubaki said, flinching. You see, Tsubaki-chan? Macaw casually inquired. No, that is not possible. Tsubaki had a slight panic attack at the idea of Soul and Blackstar working together, and he started strangling Macaw's collar. Everyone's attention was drawn to Stein when he said, well, this is no good. Everyone probably knows by now, but our class is getting a couple of new students today, Stein said, and a typical loving smile appeared on his face. Being able to go to school is good for two sisters like us who grew up on the streets, Patty, don't you think? Liz questioned her younger sister as she ascended the stairs leading to the Shibusan building with Patty and Kid. Patty never took her eyes off the expansive view of Death City as she walked backwards to see the city below. I'm friggin' happy. Liz and Patty both had difficult lives prior to joining Kid, so it was a privilege for them to have the opportunity to attend an educational facility, such as a school, academy, DMWA, or another one, she said cheerfully. Kid led the way as he ascended the stairs, followed by Liz and Patty. Why is Naruto taking so long? He asked, a little concerned for his brother. He said he was going to come with us, but I haven't seen him since this morning. His concern was allayed when Liz responded. He said he was going to pay his Kitty-chan a last-minute visit before coming. I suppose he's being delayed, she shrugged. I see. The child could only sigh in mild annoyance. He said he would come, so I suppose he will. They walked in silence until they reached the top of the stairs, at which point Kid looked up in wonder at Shibusan and exclaimed, how wonderful Chichiyu's school is. Such flawless symmetry. Would you happen to be one of the sons we keep hearing about? They asked as they arrived at the summit. Are you here to show us around the school? A voice said, and they turned to see Soul sitting at Shibusan's steps. New Kid's asking me to show him around after he's 3 hours late? Kid inquired. And Soul chuckled to himself. You must have grown accustomed to your father's 7 lights. What? 7 lights? Kid narrowed his eyes at Soul appearing before him. Kid pointed at Soul in retaliation. Don't say 7. Make use of 8. 8. What? The number 7 cannot be symmetrical if it is divided in half. Why not use 8 then? It remains perfectly symmetrical even if you cut it in half, both horizontally and vertically. Kid ranted on, before collapsing onto the floor in front of Soul. Don't use 7, please use 8, I am pleading with you. Soul could only observe the boy in front of him with a hint of concern and hesitation. Are you alright? At this, Liz sighed deeply and said bluntly, no, he's totally screwed up, as Patty laughed beside her. Hooray! When the normal members of the four heard a shout, they turned to see someone standing at one of Shibuzen's spikes. I don't care who you are, I'll never allow anyone to take my spotlight. What is that? A primate's. Liz, the Shinigami's son, I'm going to kill you, and you'll hear the rumors tomorrow. Liz said, must be a monkey, for example, I knew it, Black Star has become a god. Liz said, hey kid, it looks like he's talking to you, and the still pouting kid gave her a slow, lifeless response. Earth's biggest ego. I'll be surrounded by a halo tomorrow. The person's shouts were cut short as the spike he was standing on chipped away, leaving the boy to struggle with gravity as he descended back to Earth. If anyone had paid attention, they'd have noticed Kid having a panic attack at the sheer devastation of perfect symmetry well in his world, at least crashing his feet to the ground as he landed hard. The person revealed to be Black Star. Looks like my bigness is just too much for you to bear, the ages tremble beneath my feet, which makes sense. Liz said, hands on hips, as if discussing the weather. Oh, now you've done it. Kid gritted his teeth and said, you ruined the symmetry, you little punk. Black Star kept babbling, come get some. While totally ignoring the imminent threat that was gradually growing inside Kid, allow me to introduce you to my methods of assassination. Soul attempted to explain to his accomplice that it's not an assassination if you've been seen, but it was ignored. You repulse me. If you pick a fight with a god of death, I can't guarantee your soul's safety. The child's voice interrupted Soul's lecture to Black Star. Drawing both boys' attention to him, he glared at them, focusing mostly on Black Star before turning to face the sisters, saying, Liz, Patty, change. All right. Both sisters glowed as their forms changed into the twin demon pistols, and Kid caught them in his signature upside-down grip with his pinky at the trigger ready. Both guns aimed at Black Star. Patty responded joyfully in her own way, while her older sister could only sigh at the thought of fighting, muttering to herself, we've done nothing but fight since we got off the streets. You can have the fight if that's what you want, come on, Soul. But I'm warning you, if we go at it, I ain't losing, Black Star said confidently, and Soul stood idly, uninterested in the whole thing. But his eyes betrayed his excitement for the impending fight. You're the one that wants to fight, he said, following Kid to position himself. Hell yeah. We make a fierce duo, Black Star remarked. As Kid recalled the fight he saw with Stein, he narrowed his eyes and said, these two may not be perfect, but they managed to hold off Professor Stein. I can't let my guard down. The three stood off, 2 against 1, and Kid said, let's do it. NYA, followed by the gentle purr of a happy cat as it sat on her lover's hat and was scratched by him, enjoying the way his fingers played and scratched her belly as Naruto crossed town and approached Shibuzen. Blair meowed softly, her head lowering slightly as Naruto's hand reached up to scratch beneath her chin. You sure know how to treat a girl, Naruto. Really know how to treat a girl, NYA, Blair said. Blair let out a disappointed cry. Now my little kitten, I'm late enough as it is for class, but Naruto ignored it and stopped scratching, laughing quietly, having spoiled you to death and spent the whole morning with you, eh? He laughed once more as he felt Blair shifting on top of his hat, nearly visualizing the pouty face and crossed arms she was probably making. Not fair. You told Shinigami-sama to enroll you in Shibuzen, but why? Turning her body around enough so that she can dip her head below the rims of his hat and stare at his face. If you go to the academy, I won't have as much time to cuddle as I would like, she complained, and Naruto grinned and laughed while giving Blair a head pat. You sure do love to monopolize me, don't you, Blair-chan? The cat said with a mock pout. But consider it this way. Putting a hand to his chin in contemplation, he said, I believe that little detail was Chichiyu's method for you to ensure that I don't pursue Soul. We may get less cuddle time, as you say, but now we get to spend more time on missions. Smart ass father. He muttered that last line, and he thought he heard his father laughing. Blair looked back down at Naruto's face and giggled lightly, saying, I suppose it is in any case, Koi, why do you wish to hurt Soul-kun? I know he can be, Blair said, cocking her head, problematic occasionally, but he has good intentions and has kept me content with the quantity of lighthearted taunting I get to inflict on him. She laughed once more as she recalled all the instances in which she had sent the cool guy flying through the nosebleed. No matter if he is a good person or not, he ate your soul, Naruto said with a frown. I'm mad at him for eating your soul, Blair, he said, bringing his hands together and cracking his knuckles. Blair listened carefully as Naruto only said her name when he was serious. Koi, she sighed at her easily enraged lover. Don't worry about it, I'm a cat with multiple souls, she said, giving him a head pat. I received all 9 souls back when Shinigami-sama confiscated Soul-kun's and Mika-chan's collected souls, so it wasn't a huge deal, right? She attempted to reassure her beloved, but after staring at him for a while, he gave in and crossed his arms in a huff. All right. I can maim him, right? I won't kill him, he said, glancing out of the corner of his eye at the still smiling cat. He asked hopefully, only to get a deadpanned look from his kitty cat love. No, she replied, causing Naruto to snort once more. Blair unwinded again on Naruto's hat as she arrived at Shibuzan's steps and her beloved approached the academy, neither of them aware of the escalating altercation at the top or the throng they had amassed. With his arm changed to his scythe blade, Soul charged at Kid's back, trying to surprise him without even looking back. Kid deflected the blade with Liz's gun form. What the? Soul was taken aback by this, but he soon became shocked when Kid suddenly thrust Patty's gun form into his stomach. Click! A burst of blackish-red static power erupted from the gun, into his body, and out of his back, sending Soul flying back into the ground several feet away from Kid. As Kid stood up, Soul's body twitched, and as soon as it did, he began writhing in agony, rolling back and forth while cradling his stomach from where he was shot, saying, Christ, that hurt. Soul's cries were drowned out by Patty's laughter as Liz's voice entered to explain what had just transpired. We're not like regular guns that just shoot bullets, we shoot the soul of our master at a compressed wavelength. Stein's wheelchair rolled out of the academy as the fight went on, and his students trailed behind to watch. Oh my. Well, they ought to have chosen a different opponent, he said gravely in his typical sluggish manner, but he was still intrigued. Is the boy with the guns the one everyone is talking about, Professor Stein? Even though Mika was aware of how serious this fight was, she was still fascinated by it because, if the rumors were accurate, it would be a fantastic chance to see a fight involving Kid. As she stood behind with Tsubaki beside her, Mika asked. Stein grinned and said, Hi, Death the Kid, one of Shinigami's sons. He would have preferred to be enrolled at Shibusan. As the fight went on, Stein had the thought, oh, my dear soul, seeing Mika-san? His abilities tower over anyone else here. This caused many of the students to look in shock and fear. Fixing his glasses, Stein continued to watch the fight, saying, Look over there at Kid-kun and his twin pistols as they fight. I have a special lesson planned for you, Stein said, hesitantly, but in a creepy way. Black Star kicked Kid with a roundhouse kick, but Kid jumped back to avoid it. Soul took the chance again and charged at Kid from behind, but it was in vain as Kid raised his gun again and shot at Soul, causing the scythe boy to retreat. What are the wavelengths of their souls? Perfectly synchronized? He asked in a light-hearted tone, wanting to hear the girl's response even though he already knew the answer. Yes, Mika said, closing her eyes and opening them to see pupils forming in her normally pupil-less eyes. Her vision changed as she saw the 3 souls of Kid, Liz, and Patty. Kid had a soft orange glow with dull eyes and his signature 3 strips on the soul's head. Liz was a soft pink with a pair of lazy eyes and her cowboy hat acting as her soul's tail, as the tip waved at the top. And Patty had the same soft pink glow as her sisters but with a more upbeat expression on the soul's face. Normally, synchronizing the wavelengths of 2 weapons should be extremely challenging, but they're very stable, she said, receiving an unseen smile from Stein. And they seem to share a respect for him too, she added. No, that's not it, she said with a contemplative expression. Admiration? Amazing. That's right, Stein said, recalling the altercation. Twin pistols, the Thompson sisters. Those 2 girls grew up on the streets, so it's understandable that they would admire someone with a dignified soul like Kid-kun. Kid-kun benefits from being around people who don't share his neuroticism, that is, the Thompson sisters' easygoing and upbeat personalities. Mika remarked, they make a great team. They returned their focus to the fight as Black Star lunged at Kid. A little taste of my wavelength, please. Black Star's arm was extended to the side as static began to jump around it in preparation for a wavelength strike. The strike was thrust forward towards Kid's head, but Kid dodged it, taking his chance. Kid crouched down and sweep kicked Black Star off his feet, pushing himself upwards and with his back, colliding with Black Star's body and sending the boy flying over him. Black Star is well known for his skill in hand-to-hand fighting, so many onlookers were drawn to the action. Even though Black Star's specialty is martial arts, He's just playing with him. While Tsubaki was beginning to worry about her partner, Maka's words escaped her shocked body. And Soul can't stand up to him as he is. You're a jerk. Black Star yelled as he charged once more from one side while Soul took the other side, bringing his guns across his chest and facing his opponents. He shot at the two of them, sending them back again. He felt a tug on his leg and looked down to see that Black Star had wrapped something from his clothes around his left leg. Black Star pulled hard, spreading Kid's legs until he fell to the ground, at which point Soul transformed and shot into the air. You got it. With his full scythe form, Soul descended and spun toward Kid's prone form. Kid tilted his head just in time to avoid the blow, as the blade's glowing gleam barely missed his face and struck the ground next to him. Taking advantage of Soul's position, Kid did a backflip that also sent Black Star hurtling toward the flat side of Soul's blade, head first. As Soul's reflection from the blade glanced down at his battle partner, Black Star's body twitched a few times in agony and said, I really want to kill that punk now. Maka muttered, they're hopeless. Tsubaki and Maka could only stare at their predicament with an embarrassed expression. Winds began to kick up as it whipped around Kid's form, and Kid stood tall with a serious expression on his face. Resonance of souls. When Kid, Liz, and Patty's three yells merged, Kid's body lifted off the ground and his wavelength began to rise to Soul Seekers. Kid's soul was clearly visible all over his body, enveloping his entire form in a gentle blue glow. What's going on? Kid's soul as well as Liz Chan's and Patty Chan's have expanded, Naruto said, his head snapping up halfway up the stairs to Shibusen as he sensed the increase in power and knew who it was coming from. As his power increased, Kid's body continued to float with black tendrils of energy circling around him. These tendrils took the shape of skulls, indicating his alignment to his blood as a Shinigami. 6 sparks of static began to go off on his arms, 3 on each. As they came and went, black spike-like appendages appeared in their place. His left gun glowed pink as the form enlarged and covered a portion of his arm just below the spikes, transforming into a cannon-like weapon with a large barrel that also had the Shinigami symbol, a skull with 3 pointed teeth and eyeholes. Kid brought his arms across his chest and swung out, but his power ceased to increase. His body fell to the ground, squatting with both weapons by his sides. In a panic, Naruto thought, shit. Kid brought out the cannons, what is going on up there? And hurried as quickly as he could up the stairs while supporting Blair on top of his hat with one hand. Kasara's voice, which was unexpectedly worried, said, I don't know, but you better hurry. Whoever is facing Kid as he is now, won't likely survive if he's going to shoot them at point-blank range. If he shoots someone with this much force, he's actually going to hurt them. NYA. What's wrong, Naruto? Blair screamed, clinging to Naruto's hat while his hand also restrained her. Dude. I'm not going to make it in time, he muttered to himself before briefly turning back to Blair and saying, Blair, whatever happens, I'll use a little of my soul to get us there more quickly, so don't let go. Blair was now concerned because she knew that Naruto couldn't effectively use his soul's power unless he suffered from its consequences. Sure, he could use it for fighting or for basic purposes, just like any other Shibusen student, to pull off techniques, but it would be disastrous if he actually tapped into it without Kasara's assistance. What's happening? Before she realized what was happening, she felt the force of gravity on her as Naruto took to the skies with a pair of demonic-like wings that were slowly spreading across his back. From the point of connection she stammered out, but gasped as a violent rush of power coursed through the air and she heard the sounds of flesh ripping. Hurry Naruto-kun, Kasara thought to herself as the winged male took off towards Shibusen. We don't need another repeat of what happened at Russia, especially not here, not now, damn it. She was gritting her teeth as Naruto's unstable soul attacked her, but she had to endure for as long as she could because whatever Kid was doing, it was too dangerous to let it be because he might accidentally kill someone. As it gathered around the spikes on Kid's arms, dark lightning danced around him. Now concerned and second-guessing his decision to fight Shinigami's son, Soul remarked, I don't like the looks of that. Stable resonance. A ball of pink energy began to grow at the mouths of both cannons, pulsing with power as the rings continued feeding it. Feedback in 4 seconds. Liz's voice sounded off, as the balls of energy burst into smaller particles of energy that floated around the mouths of the cannons. Large skull-like shadows overlaid above him as it aligned with both cannons' bodies. Noise at 0.3%, Liz said, as the black lightning began to dance wildly around Kid's body. Black needles fully charged with soul wavelength. Patty voiced out in a surprisingly serious tone. 3. Liz. 2. Patty. 1. Liz. Shooting. Patty, while making a peace sign. The shadow skulls vanished from the action as Kid raised his arms and brought them together, aligning both cannons against one another as the glowing energy from within reached its peak. Death Cannon. A bright flash appeared, and with a powerful push back, the energy that had built up within shot forth in a stream of destructive proportions, causing the winds to kick as the energy charged towards the terrified couple. "Oh my god, not good," Soul screamed, too frightened to move at this point, and even if he could, he couldn't avoid the blast. Black Star, however, didn't find this the least bit worrisome. Ridiculous. "I will not be harmed by anything like that," he said. As the attack approached, a figure landed in front of them, taking the shot head on. No one else saw this, and as the blast occurred, a huge plum of smoke in the shape of a skull covered a large portion of the blast area. The shockwave of the explosion sent the pair flying back. The students who were watching stood in awe of the demonstration of power, while Macaw and Tsubaki were concerned for their partners. However, what no one was expecting was for another voice to call out from the smoke. Kid got up and turned his back on the scene, thinking that his battle was over, and the cannons on his arms transformed back into their gun forms. "Kid." With a look of horror on his face, Kid flinched, and Stein flinched too, but then he smiled savagely, knowing exactly whose voice it was. However, that smile quickly turned into a frown when he saw a humanoid silhouette with big wings. What the it couldn't be. When the smoke cleared, Naruto was standing with his knees slightly bent, arms folded across his chest, and large, tattered, black demonic wings that were red on the underside and spread outwards and then inwards to form a large protective barrier. The Shinigami's skull was dead center of the shield at the front, with the black pulsing form serving as a shield. Naruto threw off the barrier and skull shield with a powerful outward flap. His wingspan reached far, taller than he is tall on both wings. Stein muttered, "It seems he has indeed learned some secrets about his soul," but Macaw heard him nonetheless. After glancing at Stein for a moment in disbelief, she turned back to the new company and was horrified by what she saw. She was looking inside of Naruto, seeing his soul, but it wasn't what she was expecting. As she looked, she saw not only his soul but another as well, seeming to struggle against an enveloping surge of power that was trying, by the looks of it, consume it into itself. Naruto's soul was a light orange ball with a cheesy grin on it, and the eyes thinned out as it curved slightly upwards. The soul tail wasn't there, as in its place was in fact multiple spikes of hair, similar to Black Star's. However, one of the hairs seemed to extend from the bottom and out, forming a long tail-like appendage. The other soul, however, confused Macaw greatly. It was a dark red, almost blood red in color. The soul had a razor-sharp toothy grin, two pairs of vertical glowing pupils. At the top were two long rabbit-like ears, and behind it were 9 swaying tails. But the thing that confused, worried and terrified Macaw was the fact that the orange soul was much larger than the red soul, with the red being inside the orange. And in between the two, in the space that separated them, was what looked to be a literal storm cloud of black and white lightning that was fighting against the red lightning from the inner soul. It felt destructive, it felt powerful, it felt chaotic. What is this? Macaw's thoughts portraying onto her face, as Stein was carefully looking at her from the corner of his eye. So it seems he finally understands the power within him but can't control it. At least it controls him. He turned back to his pupil, having witnessed what was happening inside Naruto. How long can she keep it up before being consumed by it? He asked, narrowing his eyes. Everyone watched as Kid remained motionless as this newcomer marched his way up to the Shinigami's son, reeling his fist back. Everyone's eyes went wide at the implication, and they weren't disappointed at what happened next. A sickening sound of flesh being torn and molded was heard as the large pair of wings slowly sank into Naruto's bare back. How many times have I told you? Control your emotions when using the god-freaking death cannon. Yubaka, Liz and Patty were lucky enough to be released upon fist impact, allowing them to transform back into humans and witness Kid being sent via Naruto punch. A powerful right hook to the cheek sent Kid flying and bouncing back, his body crashing into the outer walls that surrounded Shibusen. After recovering from being blown away by the explosion, Soul and Black Star were stunned that someone had accomplished what they had been attempting to do all afternoon. The silence was broken by laughter, and everyone turned to face Professor Stein. Still haven't cracked the mystery that is Kid-kun, Naruto-kun? He got wide-eyed looks from his students and laughed at the question. He got up from his chair and approached his former students Macaw and Tsubaki, who were using the opportunity to see how their partners were doing. Naruto gave the man a feral grin while blinking owlishly, saying, "Senpai, you are a teacher here at Shibusen, but Chichiyu didn't mention that." Taking the man by the arm, Stein shook him firmly as they greeted one another. "Did you get drafted into becoming a sensei? Or did you want to delve into the thoughts of a few students? And corpses?" The two were laughing at Stein's joke, but their sense of humor did not entirely align with that of the remaining students. Those two know one another. The question coming from Soul, As Macaw helped him up, his partner gave a nod as she watched the two people interacting. Hi, Professor Stein mentioned the arrival of new students while you and Black Star were not present that made Soul freeze. Remembering a very specific detail that centered around that. He's the second one, his ex-student. But he couldn't recall for the life of him. Soul-kun. The Catwoman pinned Soul face down and looked at his face from the side with a cat-like grin. I hope Foxy Koi didn't give you a scare when he showed up, Soul-kun, she said innocently, unaware of the fear gates she had opened inside Soul. Oh, now he remembered, crap. Macaw and Soul fell over as the heavy weight of human Blair struck Soul's back. Weight of Foxy K. Koi? Soul's eyes widened as he saw Naruto's now glaring face, his eyes seeming to glow a murderous red beneath the shadows of his hair. His neck creaked forward to face the person who had just saved him. Macaw? Hi. I give you all of my material belongings, huh? Soul Eater Evans. Naruto's icy voice echoed clearly. I think you should give me an explanation for why I was away on a mission one day. To come home to discover that my beloved's house had been attacked as well, or that you and your partner were always looking for her, or the reality that the hunting has now destroyed my love's house. One particular detail, however, stands out. The deadly red eyes appear to darken into blood pools of an empty abyss, promising pain if messed with. Evans, you Soul Eater ate the soul of my Blair-chan. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Stein was grinning like a crazy person, Liz and Patty were assisting the now standing kid, and Soul was perspiring profusely. Finding the strength to survive, Soul pushed himself to stand, ignoring the eeps from Macaw and Blair, turning around and running like the hounds from hell were upon him. Soul Eater Evans, get back here, and manlyly take your punishment. I want to live, so I'm screwing up like a man. This isn't cool at all. As Soul attempted to flee Naruto's wrath, Stein burst out laughing, and all of the spectators offered a brief prayer for the soon-to-be dead man once more. Liz sighed, Patty laughed, and Kid, well, he was knocked out again because of an unexpected haircut that threw his symmetry off, scratched her head sheepishly, and Blair turned to Macaw, who watched with a twitching eyebrow of embarrassment and frustration. Blair shrugged. I apologize. Macaw-chan, I tried to calm him down so he wouldn't kill Soul-kun. I'm hoping he won't. Macaw simply palmed her face and complained to herself about Soul, the baka who happens to be her partner. I'm going to make you wish you were a death scythe when I get my hands on you, Evans. You might actually survive in this manner. Ex-partner, if Stein's former pupil has anything to say about it. She opened her fingers a little and looked at her weapon with one eye open, but she couldn't help but groan in distress at the sight, asking, why us?
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.